Suffocation. Suffocation. At that moment, the sight of Wen Renyan's corpse, everyone felt like they could not breathe. Wen Renyan had died, killed by Lin Feng on the day of his wedding. Lin Feng was proud and aloof. The crowd at the bottom of the stage were looking at him while breathing quietly with fear and trepidation. They had only heard about the fact that Lin Feng had set a city on fire and had crossed into another country to save the princess. At that moment, they could witness with their own eyes how uniquely proud and daring Lin Feng was, as well as how unconventional and unrestrained he was. Their hearts and feelings had really been stirred. People as bold and daring as Lin Feng were rare. He was very courageous and daring. All these things made him seem extremely aggressive. For having said that he was the most talented disciple of the Yunhai sect, and that he was the future patriarch of the Yunhai sect, Lin Feng simply showed his ring, which proved that he was the patriarch of the Yunhai sect, and then killed Wen Renyan. As the patriarch of the Yunhai sect, Lin Feng had to punish him for his lies. If he was the most talented disciple of the Yunhai sect, why was he killed in one hit? If he was kind and was the future patriarch, why did he betray the Yunhai sect? Why was the ring of the patriarch on Lin Feng's finger? All the lies that Wen Renyan said would have been true if he was speaking about Lin Feng. Lin Feng used to be the most talented disciple of the Yunhai sect. The future of the Yunhai sect had been put in Lin Feng's hands. Even though the enemies were extremely strong, Lin Feng hadn't betrayed his sect. Lin Feng killed anyone who would prevent him from moving forwards, even if those people were Duan Tianlang's relatives, because his heart was filled with endless hatred for these people. The crowd was convinced that if there was one day where Lin Feng was powerful enough, Duan Tianlang would be punished as well. Duan Yu was wearing her wedding dress and she was looking at the corpse with her eyes wide open. She was in complete shock. He had died. Her soulmate had been killed by Lin Feng with a single strike. Besides, Lin Feng revealed all of their lies, which trampled the pride of the thought-to-be extinct Yunhai sect. What kind of person was Duan Yu? Duan Lai stood up. He was breathing heavily. His eyes were filled with fury and wrath. A moment before, he was still flattering Wen Renyan by calling him a genius, an outstanding disciple, but at that moment, the only thing left of Wen Renyan, the two halves of his body, Lin Feng had easily dealt with him. The students of the holy courtyard of Shui also stood up and glared at Lin Feng. Wen Renyan was from the holy courtyard, but Lin Feng, to their surprise, still killed him. It was making the students of the holy courtyard lose face. They were also releasing a deadly qi which enveloped Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng raised his head and glanced at the crowd. He looked calm and serene, yet also strangely fierce. The crowd started shaking when looking at him. That guy gave the feeling of infinite coldness. He looked extremely proud and majestic. The crowd started to move. The sounds of their steps filled the atmosphere, one after the other. At that moment, the crowd was still looking at the stage, but if looking from above, the stage was now surrounded on every side. The crowd was still moving. Lin Feng had killed Wen Renyan. How could Duan Lai just give up? The crowd was convinced that Duan Lai would try to kill Lin Feng. Very quickly, the gigantic area was surrounded by people. On one side, there was a marquis, who had his own army at his disposal, while the other was Duan Lai, who was a noble of the imperial family. His social status was higher than that of marquis. Besides, the district outside of the imperial city was under Duan Lai's jurisdiction. Within his territory of jurisdiction, he obviously had his own large army. Besides, he was also involved in slave trading, which gave him powerful slaves. At that moment, everybody in the crowd wanted to attack and kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng could see that he was surrounded by millions of people, yet he still looked calm and serene. There weren't many people in Shuiyu who weren't scared of his purple spirit. Besides, Lin Feng would even dare to kill everyone here. Duan Lai was standing on the stage. He coldly glanced at Lin Feng and said, "You will pay the price for what you have done. Duan Lai, I will offer you a piece of advice. You should be very careful and think about the consequences before taking unnecessary action. Those who try to kill me usually end up dead," replied Lin Feng. Lin Feng made himself clear and was completely honest. If Duan Lai tried to kill Lin Feng would kill him. The corner of Duan Lai's mouth was trembling. He looked glum. He wanted to kill Lin Feng more than anything else. "Today you will die," said Duan Lai coldly. If Lin Feng didn't die, he would lose face. His future son-in-law had been killed on the day of the wedding. If Lin Feng was allowed to walk away, word would spread that Duan Lai and Wen Renyan were lying. In a short time everybody would learn about it. How could he let Lin Feng leave without punishment? Arrows! Duan Lai raised his hand and in a flash, his personal troops started to grab their bows and arrows and got ready to attack Lin Feng. Arrows were practical because they were a long-range weapon, so many people could attack at once. There were 10,000 personal troops at the front of the crowd. They looked absolutely majestic. These troops were ready to attack at any moment. They had all readied their bows. The sound of stretching bow strings filled the atmosphere. They were releasing a sharp chi which covered the stage. The sight of 10,000 people, ready to shoot arrows with such a sharp chi, was enough to scare anyone away. But Lin Feng looked as calm and serene in this situation. He was indifferently looking at Duan Lai. Duan Lai just had to give the order, and the 10,000 troops would release their arrows and Lin Feng would die. Life and death would be decided in an instant. When Duan Lai looked into Lin Feng's eyes, he understood. That calm and serene facial expression was a sign of Lin Feng's confidence in his own ability. At the same time, it was also the indication that Lin Feng was daring Duan Lai to act. The best action for him was to think carefully before giving the troops the next order. However, his daughter's future husband had just been killed on the day of their wedding. Could Duan Lai lower his head and tell the troops to stand down? Did he have the choice? He was looking into Lin Feng's eyes which were filled with confidence and started hesitating. He was a bit scared. Lin Feng had become so strong that he wasn't even scared of an army of people anymore. What should he do? Duan Lai was puzzled. Would Lin Feng let him off? Duan Lai, if Lin Feng doesn't die, you will be humiliated for your entire life. At that moment, Yu Tianxing whispered these words to Duan Lai which made Duan Lai shake. Immediately after he heard something else. Don't worry, Duan Lai, no matter how strong Lin Feng is. There are so many people here, we will all protect you. Duan Lai's pupils started to shrink. He glanced at Yu Tianxing and immediately after looked more determined than ever. He slowly waved his hand. Everybody was staring at Duan Lai's hand. He waved his hand. Lin Feng would die. Die, said Duan Lai in a low voice. Deadly chi invaded the entire atmosphere. The bowstrings emitted a buzzing noise and arrows whistled as they pierced through the air. A sea of arrows was flying through the sky and moving straight towards Lin Feng. Besides, at the moment when all these people released their arrows, in the air above Lin Feng, a purple light suddenly invaded the atmosphere. The gigantic sea of arrows dissolved when they encountered the purple light. That purple lake floating through the air was incredibly corrosive. What a scary spirit! The crowd was astonished. The arrows had been absolutely useless. Not a single one even touched Lin Feng's shadow. When Duan Lai saw that, his eyes started twitching violently, but now, the arrows had already been released. He had no choice anymore. Kill him! Everybody kill him! Shouted Duan Lai. In a flash, thousands of troops were attacking Lin Feng. They were all the troops that served his palace. Weak ones were at the Qi layer while the strongest ones were in the early Ling Qi layer. Duan Lai wanted to defeat Lin Feng by using his overwhelming numbers. But the sea of people didn't get near Lin Feng yet that the purple lake turned into what seemed to be an endless number of purple snakes which all moved straight towards the troops. In a flash, 1,000 people were instantly tied by the snakes. 1,000 snakes had already rushed forwards and tied up 1,000 people. How incredible was that? Those who want to die will die, said Lin Feng indifferently. The snakes suddenly opened their mouths and swallowed the troops they were constricting. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 people had been swallowed. 1,000 people had disappeared in an instant. They had all died. People's hearts were violently pounding. How terrifying! Lin Feng's spirit was truly terrifying. He did not even need to move and could easily kill 1,000 people. Who could stop him? Within the troops who farther back, everybody was panic-stricken. They were just blankly staring at the place where there was just 1,000 troops who were swallowed in an instant. They all started feeling dizzy. They couldn't stop shaking. They wanted to kill Lin Feng, but could they? Lin Feng was a monster, a god of death. Kill him! Kill him! Shouted Duan Lai furiously. He had no choice anymore. In a flash, more people started to rush forward, but just when they started to move forwards, Another 1,000 purple snakes curled around them and swallowing them. Another 1,000 people had just died. How hard was it to kill him? Even 10,000 people wasn't enough to kill Lin Feng. I can't kill him, said a scared voice. Some of the army started to run away. Trying to kill Lin Feng was courting death. Even though they were soldiers, why would they die for nothing? When the crowd saw the soldiers running away, the crowd also started to run away. None of them wanted to die for Duanlai. Lin Feng was too terrifying. They couldn't kill him. Trying to kill him was just courting one's own death. There would be no benefit at all. Besides, Duanlai clearly knew it was impossible, but was still trying to convince them to go and fight Lin Feng. Why the hell would they give their lives for Duanlai? In a flash, millions of people had dispersed and were running away in panic, which made Duanlai's eye twitch. In a flash, millions of people had dispersed and were running away in panic, which made Duanlai's eye twitch. It's over. It's really over, said Duanlai. Lin Feng was extremely strong. What he had feared most had finally come to pass, what everybody had feared. People were astonished, dumbstruck, stupefied. That spirit surprisingly could turn into thousands of purple snakes which swallowed people. How terrifying. When Lin Feng used that ability, who could fight against him? Even if there were millions of people, they still couldn't kill him. Lin Feng was a death god, a spirit of death. All these people weren't the only ones who were stupefied. Lin Feng was stupefied at his new power as well. He could now understand why the cultivator of the Zunqi layer had first given him the surplus souls technique. It was monstrously powerful. That technique had been excruciatingly painful to learn, but at that moment, Lin Feng could make 1,000 surplus souls appear with his soul strength. These 1,000 surplus souls could use the power of his purple dragon spirit, and then turn into 1,000 purple snakes. He could control them individually without a problem. In an instant he could kill 1,000 people. Therefore, Lin Feng wasn't afraid of fighting against an army of people any longer. No matter how many people came to attack him, he could kill them. Besides, he hadn't practiced the technique for a long time, but if there was a day where he could create 10,000 surplus souls, that would make him even more terrifying. If he could make 10,000 purple snakes appear, he would be able to kill 10,000 people in the blink of an eye. Who would be able to stop him? The crowd had the impression that they were caught in a nightmare. Lin Feng was too frightening. Lin Feng raised his head and looked at Duanlai, which made Duanlai's heart start pounding. Lin Feng looked calm and serene, but in Duanlai's eyes, he looked like a demon. You want to kill me? Asked Lin Feng coldly, which made Duanlai's heart jump. This time Lin Feng would really kill him. A moment before, Lin Feng had warned him that before he acted, he should think carefully about the consequences, but he still gave the order to kill Lin Feng. At that moment the millions of people had dispersed themselves. They were all unable to compete with Lin Feng, so now Lin Feng was probably going to settle his issue with Duanlai. I am a noble of Shuiyu and part of the Duan clan, said Duanlai, sounding cold and detached, as if he was trying to convince Lin Feng that he could not kill him. I am a Marquis of Shuiyu, the Qixia Marquis of Yangzhou, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and indifferent. He then continued, but you, a noble, when you wanted to kill me, it seemed like you forgot about my status. Duanlai was shaking. What Lin Feng meant was that even though Duanlai was part of the imperial family, if a noble tried to kill a marquis, why would the marquis spare him? Lin Feng still wanted to kill him. All in all, the status of marquis is something that was given to you, whereas the title of a noble is something that flows in my veins and blood. If you want to kill me, it is a severe offense against the imperial family, said Duanlai, using his connection to the imperial family, which would make other people shiver at the mere mention of it. He was afraid that Lin Feng would really kill him. He was afraid of Lin Feng. Duanlai couldn't compete with Lin Feng. The blood of the imperial family? Said Lin Feng while laughing. He then calmly smiled and said, Duan Han also had the blood of the imperial family flowing through his veins, but he tried to kill me, so I killed him. I am still standing here alive and well. Duanlai's pupils were trembling. Indeed, Lin Feng had killed Duan Tianlang's son. He had dared to kill a member of the imperial family. Duan Tianlang was also a noble, but his status had much more value than that of Duanlai. Lin Feng looked down on Duan Tianlang, so he wasn't going to care about the insignificant Duanlai. A light flashed in Duanlai's eyes. He was looking at Yu Tianxing. He could only rely on him. Yu Tianxing didn't even spare a glance at Duanlai. He slowly moved away from Duanlai, which made Duanlai's heart start to pound. Yu Tianxing, a moment before, had promised Duanlai that he would help him, but in the end, nobody could stop Lin Feng. So Yu Tianxing was moving away and leaving Duanlai to fight Lin Feng alone. At that moment, Yu Tianxing was making fun of Duanlai in his heart. How ignorant! Kill Lin Feng? If Duan Tianlang couldn't kill Lin Feng, could Duanlai kill him? Lin Feng had killed Duanlai's future son-in-law, but he had also killed Duan Tianlang's son, who hated Lin Feng the most. It was clear at a glance that it was Duan Tianlang. But Duan Tianlang wasn't trying to get his revenge on Lin Feng. The first reason was because Lin Feng had extremely strong companions at the Xianqi lair. Duan Tianlang was not their match. The second reason was that the second prince of Shuiyu had made it clear that Lin Feng was part of his faction. If anyone dared to provoke Lin Feng, wouldn't it have been the same as provoking the second prince? If Yu Tianxing tried to kill Lin Feng, he would at least try to do it secretly, but at that moment he wasn't thinking about killing Lin Feng anymore. Becoming one of Duan Wuye's enemies wouldn't be wise. Concerning the promise that Yu Tianxing made to Duanlai, there were two reasons. The first one was that a stroke of luck could have happened and Duanlai could have killed Lin Feng. And the second was that even if he didn't manage to kill Lin Feng, it didn't matter because Lin Feng would be infuriated and would kill Duanlai. If Lin Feng killed Duanlai, another member of the imperial clan, everybody would be furious. The imperial clan would not be able to take it. Everybody would see Lin Feng as an enemy. For Yu Tianxing, who had always wanted Lin Feng dead, that was a great opportunity. Only a moron like Duanlai would have believed Yu Tianxing. He really thought that they were going to kill Lin Feng if he failed. How stupid! At that moment he only had to stay back and patiently watch the situation progress. No matter who died for Yu Tianxing, the result would always be the same and it would lead to his true goal. On that day, Lin Feng had come to the wedding and was really aggressive. Yu Tianxing was overjoyed because Lin Feng had, once again, offended people who belonged to an important sphere of influence. Yu Tianxing wasn't the only one thinking this. Yu Tianxin's eyes were twinkling as well. Lin Feng was way too monstrous. If there was an opportunity, they definitely had to kill him. If they waited too long and Lin Feng broke through to the Xianqi lair, it would be way too dangerous for them to act against him. They had to kill him before that. Lin Feng had already broken through to the 9th Lingqi lair, and was only one step away from the Xianqi lair. Therefore Yu Tianxing, Yu Tianchan and other people's sinister plan was to use Duanlai because he was a fool. Lin Feng obviously didn't care about these people's sinister motives. The only thing he knew was that Duanlai was a dead man. He took a step forward while releasing a deadly qi. He was slowly moving towards Duanlai. Lin Feng! Shouted Duanlai, whose face had twisted. He looked extremely hideous. He had already understood that Yu Tianxing wouldn't help him. He was set up. I warned you a few times and told you to think carefully before you act, but you still gave the order to kill me. Since it cannot be taken back, you will die for giving the order to kill me, said Lin Feng indifferently, while releasing sword qi which invaded the entire atmosphere. The sword qi enveloped Duanlai's body. It was extremely painful. He finally understood something. The focus of the ceremony was Lin Feng. Nobody could stop Lin Feng. Amongst cultivators under the Xianqi lair, nobody was able to defeat Lin Feng. But Duanlai didn't know that at all. The crowd didn't know that either. Were cultivators who had just reached the Xianqi lair the ones who could defeat Lin Feng? In Celestial River, Lin Feng had killed several cultivators of the Xianqi lair. Besides, that was already some time ago. Lin Feng, at that moment, could already make 1,000 surplus souls appear compared to his previous 100. If he used all of his terrifying techniques and coupled them with the power of his purple spirit, how terrifying would that be? Nobody knew because Lin Feng had not come across a reason to use it. No need to run, the situation is hopeless now. From the moment when you gave the order to kill me, you were already a dead man. Duanlai, I already gave you enough chances. Lin Feng was looking Duanlai in the eye. His voice was cold and indifferent. Immediately after, his legs moved and he jumped through the air straight towards Duanlai. Would you dare? Shouted Duanlai furiously. He was frantically moving backwards. However, at that moment, a storm of purple snakes moved towards him. It seemed like there were countless purple snakes surrounding him and attacking from every single direction. Immediately, Duanlai was completely consumed by the snakes. That move made people's hearts stop. It was over. They were looking at the purple light where Duanlai was. The crowd understood that Duanlai had already died. As expected, when the purple snakes dispersed, Duanlai's body wasn't there anymore. It had vanished without trace. Duanlai had died. People's hearts were pounding. Yu Tianxing and Yu Tianchun had a cold smile. Their hearts were rotten and pumped venom instead of blood. They definitely wanted to set a trap for Lin Feng to get rid of him once and for all. On the vast road outside of the imperial city, 3 people on horses were galloping at full speed against the wind. On the vast road outside of the imperial city, 3 people on horses were galloping at full speed against the wind. They were wearing bamboo hats, long chongpaos, and kept their heads low and their faces were hidden. Besides, 2 of them seemed to be wearing bronze masks under their bamboo hats, making their faces completely hidden. Then finally, these people arrived at the external part of the imperial city and stopped in front of Qing Xian's restaurant. The Qing Xian restaurant staff took their horses to the stable and let the 3 people enter the restaurant. The 3 people remained silent and immediately went to a table. They looked calm and serene. "Hello, how may I help you?" the waiter asked. The one who seemed to be the leader raised his head. He looked clean and handsome, but on his clean and handsome face, one could see a mysterious and profound expression in his eyes. He also gave off the impression that he was very mature, that he had already experienced many things in this world. The expression in his eyes almost seemed like it was filled with the arrogance of a cultivator. "We would like a pot of tea, 2 jars of alcohol, and a plate of pickles," the middle-aged man said in a soft and friendly tone. "Understood," the staff member replied and immediately left. "General, should I make some discreet inquiries?" the person next to the middle-aged man asked. The middle-aged man just slightly shook his head and said in a low voice, "Wait a while." The other person slightly nodded but didn't add anything. At that moment, the atmosphere in Qing Xian's restaurant became very lively and noisy. Many people started talking unceasingly and sounded very excited. "Your Excellency, what is so exciting?" At that moment, a voice spread in the restaurant. Someone replied, "Haha, you shouldn't stay in the restaurant forever. Otherwise you will miss out on all the spectacular events, like when Ren Yan and Duan Yu's wedding ceremony." Too many people went to see when Ren Yan and Duan Yu's wedding. "Even if I did go, what was there to see?" the other person said while shaking his head. "What was there to see? Let me tell you something, the people who were there will not be able to stop talking about it. Such an event is amazing and unforgettable, don't you think?" Amazing? Unforgettable? Are you not exaggerating too much? Indeed, a wedding is a spectacular event, but after a few days you will forget about it. Spectacular, but you can quickly forget about it? Well, you guys should go there and you will see. Everybody is there. Everyone who went there is still in shock right now. Today is when Ren Yan and Duan Yu's wedding ceremony, but when Ren Yan and Duan Yu's father, Duanlai, both died. Someone killed them. When Ren Yan and Duanlai had been killed. When people heard that, their hearts started to pound and their faces became rigid. In the restaurant, many people stopped talking. But immediately after, these people burst into an uproar. What happened? Speak more clearly, what really happened? Yes, how could when Ren Yan and Duanlai die? Who would dare to kill them? Who even has the strength to kill them? These questions were bursting forth from people's mouths, but they were only wondering how they died and if the information was false. How could when Ren Yan and Duanlai die? Who had the courage and strength to kill them? The 3 people with bamboo hats also seemed interested. When the 2 masked people heard that when Ren Yan had died, their hearts started to race. The man was speaking in riddles to make it sound more exciting. But at that moment, the man was keeping his interlocutors in suspense and did not tell them the most interesting details. He was just smiling indifferently. "Your Excellency, the pickles are on me today," said a voice breaking the silence. The one called Your Excellency smiled and said, "All right, since everyone wants to know, I will tell you. You might remember that in the past, there was a person who set a city on fire, killing hundreds of thousands of enemy soldiers, and also crossed into another country to save the princess." Of course I remember. It was Lin Feng. Who could forget his name? That person smiled wholeheartedly and immediately said, Lin Feng is back. He came back to the imperial city. Lin Feng is back. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng had disappeared for such a long time and had finally returned. Your Excellency, the fact that Lin Feng came back, does it have anything to do with Wen Renyan and Duan Lai? Another person asked. Of course it does. Don't you all know? Lin Feng was a disciple of the Yunhai sect just like Wen Renyan, but when Duan Tianlang exterminated the Yunhai sect, Wen Renyan chose to betray the sect while Lin Feng remained true. In the end, they surrounded him and tried to kill him, but he battled his way past the army. He was then made the new patriarch of the Yunhai sect. This is why Lin Feng hates Duan Tianlang and went to kill his son as revenge. Besides, this time, he went and personally punished Wen Renyan for his betrayal of the sect. Duan Lai wanted to avenge Wen Renyan's death, but Lin Feng killed him in retaliation. It sounded like that middle-aged man was talking about a legendary hero, which made everyone grow even more excited. They could imagine Duan Tianlang surrounding the Yunhai sect with an army and Lin Feng, alone, brandishing his sword and carving a bloody path through his enemies, like a hero. They could also imagine Lin Feng in Duan Lai's palace, killing a traitor, like a hero of justice. Their hearts were beating faster and faster. Surprisingly, on the day of Wen Renyan and Duan Yu's wedding ceremony, Lin Feng had killed Wen Renyan and Duan Lai. As expected, his actions were insane. Unfortunately, they hadn't gone to watch and they had missed the show. What a pity. The man called Your Excellency by the others saw that the crowd seemed satisfied. However, at that moment a few silhouettes appeared. Two ice-cold and bloodthirsty eyes were staring at him. That person was releasing an extremely dense and deadly qi. When did that happen? That person asked, sounding cold and detached, which made the man surprised. He quickly replied, Not long ago. Now the news is spreading in the external part of the city. Very quickly, everybody will come to know about it. I did not lie about anything at all. The person's silhouette flickered and they immediately moved back to where they were. He looked at the man with the bamboo hat and said, General, it just happened recently. Let's go, the middle-aged man said while standing up and finishing his cup of tea. Immediately after, he left Qing Xian's restaurant and walked towards Duan Lai's palace. But when they arrived, there was nobody in sight. It seemed like the man was telling the truth. The news that Lin Feng had returned and killed Duan Lai, and Wen Renyan was spreading quickly throughout the external part of the city, and would soon reach the interior of the imperial city. Duan Lai was a noble of Shuiyu. The death of a noble wasn't a normal affair. It was a very serious thing which would draw the attention of the Shuiyu elites. The storm could not be suppressed this time because Lin Feng had killed another member of the Duan clan. He wouldn't be able to remain unscathed for much longer. Lin Feng's enemies wouldn't let him have any peace. For example, Yu Tianxing and Yu Tianchun had left Duan Lai's palace, and after that, they had already started spreading rumors about what had happened, trying to plot against Lin Feng. Lin Feng was incredibly gifted. They couldn't let him continue to live. Lin Feng hadn't thought about the series of events and the people plotting against him. He had just followed his heart. He killed Wen Renyan because he had betrayed the Yunhai sect and then sullied its name. If he let him live, Lin Feng wouldn't be able to find peace in his heart. Lin Feng didn't regret killing Wen Renyan. Then Duan Lai, in order to avenge Wen Renyan, tried to kill him. Lin Feng was of course not going to show mercy on anyone who tried to kill him. It had caused trouble, but Lin Feng had no regrets at all. Lin Feng was entering the Celestial Academy for the first time in a while. These days, Lin Feng was already famous, especially since he had also cruelly beaten the fourth-ranked disciple of the academy, Du Gushang. He had forced Du Gushang to kneel down in front of him. That was a cruel and heartless humiliation. It was said that Lin Feng had even cut off Du Guzhao's arm in Yangzhou City. Coupled with the fact that he had accomplished many great accomplishments, it was possible to say that everybody had already seen Lin Feng's portrait. There were even many people who considered Lin Feng as the pride of the Celestial Academy. Even if, from the beginning to the end, Lin Feng had never considered himself as a student of the academy, he had only gone there to practice cultivation, nothing more. It's Lin Feng. Look, Lin Feng came back to the academy. Inside the Celestial Academy, voices were crying out, one after the other. They had seen Lin Feng. That incredible person who was already well known within Shueyu had returned and was at the academy. At the moment Lin Feng arrived at the Celestial Academy, two pieces of information reached the ears of the elites. Rich and powerful people in the Imperial City liked to gather information. At the moment Lin Feng arrived at the Celestial Academy, two pieces of information reached the ears of the elites. Rich and powerful people in the Imperial City liked to gather information. The first thing was that Lin Feng, on Wen Renyan and Duan Yu's wedding day, had killed Wen Renyan and Duan Lai. He was extremely audacious. Everybody knew about the events that occurred. The second thing was that Lu Tsonglan had almost been executed, but was saved thanks to Lin Feng, and he was now back in the Imperial City. Of course, not many people knew about these things. Only those who had a high social status were able to receive the information. Lu Tsonglan had almost been executed by Duan Tianlang, but Lin Feng arrived at the most crucial moment and saved Lu Tsonglan. However, Lu Tsonglan's cultivation had been sealed. Besides, the mutual hatred that Lu Tsonglan and Duan Tianlang shared was endless. Duan Tianlang's son Duan Han had died because of it. Even though Duan Tianlang created false charges against Lu Tsonglan, and was at the origin of a conspiracy, he couldn't control his hatred for Lu Tsonglan and Lin Feng. It was clear that if he had the chance to kill Lin Feng and Lu Tsonglan, he wouldn't hesitate. Under such circumstances, Lu Tsonglan surprisingly wasn't scared of coming back to the Imperial City. Wasn't he scared of dying? This information was spreading behind the scenes, silently and secretly. It was extremely dangerous. Many people wanted to put Lin Feng in a fatal position. Besides, this time he had killed Duan Lai, which was one of the worst offenses possible. Lin Feng had given people an excuse to get rid of him. Lin Feng knew nothing about that. At that moment he had come back to the Celestial Academy. At that moment he was in the palace which hosted the living quarters, and there were many familiar faces. Jing Yun, Yi Shui, Duan Feng, Yuan Shan. They were all there. After Lin Feng left, they had stayed at the Celestial Academy, enhancing their cultivation. Besides, because Lin Feng hadn't been there, they hadn't invited anyone else because nobody was as strong as Lin Feng. Besides, when Ao Shui also came by once in a while, these people's cultivations increased very quickly. Jing Yun had already broken through to the 3rd Ling Qi layer, Yu Shan to the 5th Ling Qi layer, and then Duan Feng, who was the fastest amongst them. Duan Feng had become much more mature than back on the road. He had surprisingly already broken through to the 6th Ling Qi layer. He had extremely high natural talent, which greatly shocked Lin Feng. Duan Feng had progressed way too quickly. Maybe it was due to the strength of his blood spirit. Duan Feng's body was filled with extremely strong blood vessels. Therefore, his natural talent was also extraordinary. When Lin Feng saw those few old friends, he felt a little bit relieved. In the past, these people wanted to follow him, but he had refused. They had stayed at the academy, which turned out to be very beneficial. They were still very young. They were not extremely strong. Calmly staying at the academy to practice was obviously the best thing for them. But considering the level they had reached while Lin Feng was away, they could start going outside to practice. Above the 3rd Ling Qi layer, a cultivator wasn't considered as weak anymore, especially when it came to such young people with elevated backgrounds. "Brother Lin Feng, what is your cultivation level?" asked Duan Feng with impatience flashing in his eyes. Lin Feng had accomplished great things in Shueyu, so he was probably extremely strong already. He had maybe broken through to the Xian Qi layer. When Duan Feng asked Lin Feng that question, everybody started impatiently staring at Lin Feng. "Young master must have broken through to the Xian Qi layer," said Yi Shui. "I'm not very far from breaking through to the Xian Qi layer," nodded Lin Feng. He could already feel that his cultivation level reached the very peak of the Ling Qi layer. Breaking through to the Xian Qi layer would happen at the right moment. Lin Feng was convinced that he was going to break through to the Xian Qi layer very soon. When the crowd heard Lin Feng's confirmation, they were stupefied. As expected, they had guessed right. Lin Feng was soon going to break through to the Xian Qi layer. His natural talent was monstrous. Jing Yun had known Lin Feng for a while already, and no matter what Lin Feng did, she wasn't surprised much anymore. With Lin Feng, it seemed like miracles were a common occurrence. But Yuan Shan didn't remain indifferent. The muscles on his face were twitching. That guy had monstrous natural talent. Lin Feng had only broken through to the third Ling Qi layer when he had joined the academy. He had progressed step by step, and at that moment was only one step away from the Xianqi layer. How mighty did the words Xianqi layer sound. For Lin Feng it was like a dream. Lin Feng had dreamed of breaking through to the Xianqi layer for a long time. In the past, a disciple had broken through to the Xianqi layer at the Celestial Academy, but they were much older than Lin Feng and didn't have the same talent as him. Apart from him, nobody else could rival Lin Feng in the entire academy. The second-ranked disciple, Bai Luo, couldn't compete with Lin Feng either. Ha 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 ha. At that moment a loud laugh rolled through the atmosphere and pierced through their ears. Yuan Shan was in shock. What a strong qi. Could it be that someone else has broken through to the Xianqi layer? Yuan Shan was stupefied. In a short time after having broken through to the Xianqi layer, a person's qi would become monstrously strong. Besides, the powerful qi fell onto the academy again. Let's go and see. Lin Feng could clearly sense that the qi was strong. Leaving the Ling Qi layer and breaking through to the Xianqi layer was like penetrating into a completely different world. They left the room and went to the central cultivation tower. That loud laugh had come from the central cultivation tower. At that moment, Lin Feng wasn't the only who was going to see what was going on there. People were equally coming from all directions and walking towards the central cultivation tower. At the top of the cultivation tower, there was a silhouette, and a strong wind was blowing around them, which made them look majestic. Looking at the person's body, a vast quantity of pure qi was orbiting it. It was dazzling to the eyes. That was exactly the symbol of a cultivator who had just broken through to the Xianqi layer. Bai Luo has advanced. The crowd was shaking. The second-ranked student of the academy, Bai Luo, had followed his senior steps and was the second person to break through to the Xianqi layer. It was incredibly majestic. It seems like the modern geniuses of Shui are all starting to rise. The crowd had the impression that they were in a dream. The Celestial Academy had another genius. Besides, in the imperial city of Shui, many people had also broken through to the Xianqi layer. These all represented a potential strength for Shui in the future. Cultivators at the Xianqi layer all had unique skills which made them remarkable. People firmly believed the rumors that a new era would start because of the Shui competition. That era would be called the era of the geniuses. There would be an endless quantity of geniuses who would constantly surpass other geniuses, becoming unparalleled geniuses. The only words which could describe such an event were, the era of the geniuses. In the air, that proud silhouette was arrogantly smiling. In the air, that proud silhouette was arrogantly smiling. Blue void spirit appear, said the silhouette in the air. In a flash, his spirit appeared. The blue void spirit was blue and looked pure and clean like water. It was as clear as the sky. It transformed into a storm of raindrops, but the raindrops weren't falling towards the ground. These raindrops seemed like they were illusionary as well. What a marvelous spirit! I had never seen Bai Luo use his spirit before. I wonder how strong his blue void spirit is? When the crowd saw that clear blue spirit which looked like water, they were thinking that it must be incredible. They were also very curious. Blue void spirit. When Bai Luo sensed his spirit, he smiled arrogantly and said, "From today, I, Bai Luo, am the best disciple of the entire Celestial Academy. Dubai or Wen Aoshui are no match for me anymore. Besides, concerning Lin Feng, even if he breaks through to the Xianqi layer, in my eyes he is just a nobody." Bai Luo was full of confidence, but the arrogance contained in his voice rose to the heavens. It shocked many people. Bai Luo was the second-ranked disciple of the Celestial Academy. He was saying that when Aoshui couldn't compete with him, they could understand that. Then he was saying that Lin Feng was a nobody in his eyes, they could also understand that, but Dubai. He had been the top disciple of the Celestial Academy for such a long time. He was extremely gifted, but Bai Luo, who had just broken through to the Xianqi layer, dared say that Dubai couldn't compete with him anymore. The crowd didn't know how Bai Luo suddenly became so arrogant. At that moment, Bai Luo was looking down at the crowd with an arrogant smile on his face. He of course knew what the crowd was thinking. These last couple of years he had always been ranked second, oppressed by Dubai. Bai Luo will prove what I say. In 3 days here I will challenge Dubai when Ao Shui and Du Gushang. Oh, and if the so-called genius Lin Feng wants to come, I don't mind either. Qiong Bai Luo smiled coldly and said, tell everyone about it. In 3 days I will respectfully await them all here. When he finished talking, Qiong Bai Luo started walking through the air. In a flash he had disappeared and nobody knew where he had gone. The crowd was just standing there dumbstruck. Qiong Bai Luo surprisingly wanted to challenge Dubai when Ao Shui, Du Gushang and Lin Feng. How arrogant. After having broken through to the Xianqi layer, Qiong Bai Luo had become overconfident, considering everything and everyone beneath his notice. Could it be that Qiong Bai Luo's spirit has something special which enables him to become the first-ranked student in the academy? Could he even rival the 8 high officials? Many people had similar thoughts because none of them had any idea what caused this. However, Qiong Bai Luo's confidence was really giving them a feeling of power. It was shaking their soul. At that moment, Lin Feng was also standing in the crowd and observing the vanishing silhouette. Lights were flashing in his eyes. A moment before, Lin Feng, using his earth fusion, was able to investigate Qiong Bai Luo's spirit. He found out that the raindrops of the blue void spirit actually sealed the atmosphere. The air inside and outside of that blue matter was not entirely the same. That blue void is almost like another world. Could it be that Bai Luo had obtained his name because of his spirit? Thought Lin Feng, but he immediately shook his head. Qiong Bai Luo seemed to be very interested in becoming the first-ranked disciple of the academy. He is even trying to prove to everyone that he is the best, immediately after having broken through to the Xianqi layer. Besides, what annoyed Lin Feng was that without any provocation, someone had involved him again. Qiong Bai Luo had said Lin Feng's name. He despised Lin Feng's rise to fame so much that he even called him a nobody. How rude! When young master Lin Feng breaks through to the Xianqi layer, he would easily teach him a lesson on manners, said Yi Shui angrily. Qiong Bai Luo had said that Lin Feng was a nobody. How rude! Lin Feng hadn't broken through to the Xianqi layer, but he was much younger than Qiong Bai Luo. Lin Feng, at the same age as Qiong Bai Luo, would be much stronger than him. Lin Feng didn't care and smiled. He glanced at Yi Shui to show her some support. She was really bright, intelligent and full of compassion. She didn't say that Lin Feng was weaker than Qiong Bai Luo. Instead, she said that Lin Feng would eventually be stronger than Qiong Bai Luo. At the same time, she was advising Lin Feng not to be swayed away by personal feelings and to avoid the challenge. Yi Shui's sentence, which sounding simple and innocent, actually contained many hidden meanings. Yi Shui looked at Lin Feng with her head slightly lowered. Her face was slightly red as well. When looking at Lin Feng's eyes, she had the feeling that she was a tiny and powerless person. She felt that she couldn't escape from Lin Feng's eyes. Let's go, said Lin Feng indifferently. However, they hadn't even started walking when Lin Feng stopped again. In front of him, a girl was standing and slightly lowering her head. Both her fists were firmly clenched. Yun. She. Lin Feng vaguely remembered this young girl. Her name was similar to Yun Shi, whom he had met in Celestial River, but the second character wasn't the same. You still remember me? Said Yun Shi while raising her head. Her face was completely red and she looked a bit shy. Lin Feng surprisingly remembered her name. Yes, said Lin Feng while smiling and nodding. When they met, a girl was trying to convince Yun Shi to have a one-night stand with Du Gushang in exchange for a cultivation room. However, Yun Shi said that she liked Lin Feng, but she didn't have any perverted thoughts and was still pure. After that, Du Gushang threatened Yun Shi. He was extremely aggressive. Lin Feng wasn't able to ignore it and humiliated Du Gushang, making him kneel down in front of him. After that, he accompanied Yun Shi to a room in the central cultivator tower. Lin Feng could obviously remember these things. Lin Feng. When Yun Shi saw that Lin Feng was nodding, excitement appeared on her face. She wanted to say something but her lips weren't moving. She was just blankly staring at him. Are you alright? After a moment, Yun Shi could only say 3 words. I'm fine, thank you, said Lin Feng with a warm smile on his face. Yun Shi felt a bit dizzy. She was usually very extrovert, but now, she was quiet and introvert. I'm leaving. Keep practicing hard, said Lin Feng while nodding at Yun Shi. Immediately after, he left. Yun Shi raised her head and saw the people leaving. She couldn't help but feel hopeless. She would try to leave the tower to walk around more in the future, and see if she could meet Lin Feng again. She hadn't expected to meet Lin Feng at that moment. Unfortunately, she hadn't been able to say anything. There are such beautiful women by his side, thought Yunxi with a strange feeling in her heart. All the girls around Lin Feng were very beautiful. Yuxian, don't think too much. They don't belong to the same world as us, said a young girl next to Yunxi, trying to cheer her up. She was Yunxi's friend. In the past, she had also seen everything, and it was clear to her that Yunxi liked Lin Feng, especially after that day. She had become obsessed with Lin Feng. But the gap between her and Lin Feng would always be monstrous. They didn't belong to the same world. Yuxian looked at her friend, and her friend noticed that she had tears in her eyes. They had a brief encounter, but they lived in separate worlds. They would always be able to meet for a brief moment, but they would always be separated again. Yunxi was sad. Lin Feng was the only one for her. Lin Feng wasn't keeping track of their meetings. That girl didn't occupy any special place in Lin Feng's heart. However, he had noticed the girl's feelings. Lin Feng, it seems like she likes you, said Lan Jiao with a smile, yet not a smile on her face. So what? Said Lin Feng while looking at Lan Jiao. Do you think that it's dull and uninteresting? Why wouldn't you accept a girl who likes you? For people like you, having several women is normal, continued Lan Jiao with a teasing smile on her lips. What she said surprised the few other girls who were there as well. In the continent of the Nine Clouds, cultivation was the most important thing, but relationships were also important. There were some men who felt that 3 or 4 women still weren't enough. It was the same for all cultivators. Some extremely strong female cultivators also had multiple men. Of course, the first case was the most common, the second was more rare. Lin Feng looked at her with a twinkle in his eyes and said, "So what you are trying to say is that even if someone like you wanted to become my girlfriend, I should accept, right?" When Lan Jiao heard Lin Feng, she was stupefied. She immediately glared at Lin Feng and swore in a low voice, "Who would want to become the girlfriend of a bastard? Stupid fool." Two days had passed, and the news of Chong Bai Luo's challenge to Dubai, when Ao Shui and Lin Feng was already widespread. 2 days had passed, and the news of Chong Bai Luo's challenge to Dubai, when Ao Shui and Lin Feng was already widespread. Many people were discussing it, which meant that Lin Feng was included in their conversations. However, at that moment, he was calmly lying on a bench made from stone in a courtyard. On his side was Meng Qing, who, as before, looked neither cold nor warm. She was gazing into the distance, but it was impossible to tell what she was thinking. At the same time, Lan Jiao, Jingyun and Yishui were also in the courtyard. Lan Jiao was showing the 2 other girls what problems hindered the efficiency of their cultivation practice. Lin Feng was glancing at the girls once in a while, and he could see that they were getting along really well. At that moment, someone outside was knocking at the door. "Come in," said Lin Feng, and immediately after the door opened and a silhouette with a bamboo hat appeared. That person raised their head and looked at Lin Feng. A bronze mask appeared in Lin Feng's field of vision. Under that mask were twinkling eyes. "Lin Feng, brother," shouted the person. Lin Feng looked surprised and then stood up. "Pajun." "Lin Feng, brother, it's me," said Pajun while entering the courtyard. The door then slowly closed itself. "Pajun, when did you come to the Imperial City?" Lin Feng was surprised. He walked towards Pajun. Lu Tsonglan had told the elite troops to stay with Lin Feng, but Pajun and Hanman left with Lu Tsonglan and not Lin Feng. Pajun should have been in Duanran and not in the Imperial City. How come he was in the Imperial City? "Lin Feng, brother, we came back to the Imperial City 3 days ago. It's just that the Celestial Academy doesn't allow other to enter. The last 2 days I've been trying to find a solution." "We," whispered Lin Feng. "Who else is in the Imperial City?" "Han Man and the General are here as well." "Lin Feng, the General wants to see you as well," said Pajun, sounding serious, which worried Lin Feng. Lu Tsonglan had rushed from Duanran to the Imperial City because he wanted to see Lin Feng. It seemed like he had something important to tell him, otherwise, Lu Tsong wouldn't have taken such risks and personally come back to the Imperial City. Lin Feng, of course, understood that the Imperial City was a dangerous place for Lu Tsonglan. "Let's go," said Lin Feng. He didn't feel like talking there anymore. "All right," said Pajun while nodding and immediately turned around. Then they left at top speed. In the middle of the courtyard, the girls were a bit surprised. Besides, Mengqing calmly and peacefully stood up, and then followed Lin Feng. Mengqing, you can stay here. If there's no problem, I will be back quickly, said Lin Feng while turning around and looking at Mengqing. Mengqing looked surprised and then nodded. You could just dive straight in and slaughter everybody. Lin Feng was astonished. They had refused to send reinforcement troops and refused to repair the city. They had given up Duanren City, and they were almost delivering it to Mou. But I am afraid for the people of Shuiyu. If Mo Jia on the other side of the Duanren border gave the order, the Mou troops can cross the Duanren border, but they must pay attention to whom they kill and which cities they attack. It cannot be random slaughter, said Lu Tsonglan, making Lin Feng grow surprised. Mo Jia could give the order to cross the Duanren border, but then the troops couldn't destroy cities as they wished. Everything sounded like a joke. Lin Feng, it must also sound like a joke for you, as if the imperial family doesn't care about its people. They are giving their people to Mou, but Mou is a person who gives the order not to randomly kill. It's simply ridiculous, said Lu Tsonglan while laughing to himself. He then grabbed his glass of alcohol, raised it and drained it down in one gulp. Cough cough. Lu Tsonglan coughed. He was shaking and looked very weak. Lin Feng wanted to help him, but Lu Tsonglan stopped him with his hand. Come Lin Feng, drink some alcohol. There is no other issue that I need to tell you about. I just wanted to tell you these things and drink some alcohol with you, said Lu Tsonglan. He felt lonely. During the war, he had lost over 100,000 of his soldiers and their bones littered the ground. The last remaining soldiers had followed Lin Feng and were in Yangzhou City. The only person left by Lu Tsonglan's side was Lu Fei. But there were some things which Lu Tsonglan wasn't willing to talk about with Lu Fei. So he didn't have someone with whom he could share his burden. That proud general who had reached the clouds ended up bitterly emotionless with no remaining brilliance or glory. An endless sadness had invaded his heart. Let's drink, said Lin Feng while raising his glass and then downing it. Immediately after, he filled Lu Tsonglan's glass back up. He didn't what to advise to Lu Tsonglan. He also had nothing to advise Lu Tsonglan about. They were just downing glasses one after the other. Lu Tsonglan's face was becoming paler and paler, but he wasn't showing any signs that he wanted to stop drinking. He was still downing glasses. Lin Feng, when I die, I hope that you will take good care of Fei Fei. She's never had parents since childhood. She has been through many hardships while growing up because of me. She also has a bad temper. I hope that you can forgive her. Even though Lu Tsonglan had drunk a lot of alcohol, he was still conscious. He was looking Lin Feng in the eyes while talking. Uncle Lu, otherwise you could stay in the imperial city, don't go back. Lu Tsonglan shook his head. A deep and profound smile appeared on his face and he said, there is something which must be done besides before leaving. There is something which I would like to help you with. Help me with something? Lin Feng didn't understand what Lu Tsonglan meant. Someday you will understand. I will just tell you one sentence, said Lu Tsonglan and then made a pause. Immediately after, he intensely and fixedly stared Lin Feng straight in the eyes and said slowly, heaven and earth are cruel to treat its creatures like straw dogs. Lin Feng's heart suddenly started shaking. He had obviously already heard these words. He had never thought that he would hear these words from Lu Tsonglan. Such words coming from the general, who was a soft and friendly person, was astonishing. Heaven and earth are cruel to treat its creatures like stray dogs. Heaven and earth are cruel to treat its creatures like stray dogs. In that and cold and cruel world, cultivation was based on one heartless principle. One had to constantly become stronger. That was the only way to handle the heartlessness of heaven and earth. Giving up and dying because of the cruel rules of the world was easy. When Lu Tsonglan finished talking, he stood up. He immediately walked towards the exit. Follow me, we're going back to Duanren City. Pajun and Hanman glanced at Lin Feng, nodded and immediately left, following Lu Tsonglan. Lin Feng was still sitting and remained silent. No matter what reason had just pushed Lu Tsonglan to leave, he had just come to drink a few glasses of alcohol with Lin Feng and chat, nothing more. However, were the meaning of his words as simple as that? Lin Feng raised his glass, downed it and put it back on the table. He was sitting at that table in the restaurant, alone and thinking about the meaning of those words. Lu Zonglan had rushed from Duanren City over to the Imperial City because he wanted to tell that to Lin Feng. Heaven and earth are cruel to treat the creatures like stray dogs. Did it contain a hidden message? After what seemed to be a long period of time, Lin Feng stood up and immediately left. But Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to leave. He had only taken a few steps and he stopped again. He gazed into the distance and said indifferently, "I've been here for such a long time, I should probably leave now." The atmosphere was calm, it was slightly raining and there was a slight chill in the air. In the distance where Lin Feng was looking, there was a silhouette. That person was looking at Lin Feng. How powerful! He hadn't shown any signs of his presence, but Lin Feng knew he was there. "Who are you?" Lin Feng looked in the distance in a detached way. His eyes looked cold. "Lin Feng, you are only the officer of the Qi Xie troops and you dared to kill Duan Lai. This is an unforgivable crime. Today you must come with me," said the person sounding cold and detached, which made Lin Feng narrow his eyes. A cold light filled that person's eyes. "Show yourselves. Since you have all come, what's the point in hiding?" said Lin Feng indifferently. Immediately, in the distant darkness, some silhouettes appeared and all started to fill the rooftops one after the other. They were looking at Lin Feng with cold glares. They all had fierce glares, none of them seemed to be weak. Then they all jumped through the air until they arrived near Lin Feng, and then surrounded him. "You still haven't told me. Who are you?" asked Lin Feng. At the start, he thought that these people's target was Lu Zonglan, but Lu Zonglan had already left and nobody stopped him. However, now people were blocking Lin Feng. Besides, it had to do with the Duan Lai issue. "No need to ask us who we are. You just need to know that we are in charge of enforcing the laws of the Imperial City," said the original person who spoke. His voice was filled with coldness. "Lin Feng, no need to resist, you will have no chance of resisting us. If you try to resist, you will die." "Resist? Die?" Lin Feng was a bit surprised and he was releasing some cold energy. However, at that moment the sound of galloping horses could be heard. It seemed like a large group of people were rushing over to that location. A short moment later, they could distinctly hear the rumbling sounds caused by horses. The person who seemed to be the leader of the people on horses was a cultivator who looked extremely strong and cruel. Lin Feng knew that person. It was the officer of the Imperial Guards, Yu Ji, who was also one of Duan Wuye's friends. The Imperial Guards encircled them, which stupefied those who were encircling Lin Feng. They were staring at Yu Ji and said, "Yu Ji, what are you doing?" "Huaqing, I should be the one asking you that question. I, Yu Ji, am the officer of the Imperial Guards and the Imperial City is a territory under my control. But now you are here, what is that supposed to mean?" Yu Ji sounded cold and detached, yet serious, which made Huaqing stupefied. He then smiled coldly and said, "The Imperial City is under your control? Lin Feng killed a noble of the Imperial family, and he is still free to walk around. What do you think that you, the Imperial Guards, are doing? I will handle that when the time comes. However, since when are you allowed to exceed your status and meddle in other people's affairs, including my own?" said Yu Ji as cold and detached as before. Huaqing's eyes twinkled and he glanced at the Imperial Guards. They were extremely strong these days. If Huaqing decided to attack, they would suffer serious losses. Besides, everybody knew that the Imperial City Guards were now part of Duan Wuye's faction. Who would dare to not give him face? "Lin Feng will come with us today." However, at that moment, another cold and detached voice emerged in the atmosphere. In the distance, two silhouettes appeared on a building, along with others hiding in the shadows. They all looked ice cold. These two people were releasing a monstrously strong qi which made people shiver. Xian Qi layer. That qi has the strength of the Xian Qi layer. Besides, the other one who hadn't spoken had only one arm. How young! Lin Feng glanced at the person's missing arm, which made his heartbeat accelerate. It was said that the prodigious student of the Celestial Academy, who had broken through the Xian Qi layer a short time before, was called Dubai and only had one arm, his left arm. Lin Feng killed a noble and thinks that he is better than everyone. "We will take Lin Feng with us," said the cultivator of the Xian Qi layer that had spoken. His qi was abnormally monstrous. It seemed like these people had come well prepared and determined to kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng had said that he could rely on his own strength to ensure his safety. If he left with them, would his statement still be valid? They must be from a dark league, right? Said Yuji, sounding ice cold. Dark leagues were influential and were also a way to increase connections. The dark leagues all represent small spheres of influence. They were divided according to the numerous high-ranking officials of Shuiyu's imperial city. Dark leagues were usually created with the sole purpose of hiring assassins. When high-ranking officials had the impression that someone was threatening them in their functions, they sent dark leagues to apply their own justice. These two people seemed to belong to a dark league. Dubai had broken through to the first Xianqi layer. He was recognized as a genius of the Celestial Academy. He was obstinate and unruly. There weren't many people who could help him channel his darker emotions. What if I don't agree? Said Yuji. Immediately, an incredibly oppressive energy emerged from Dubai and the other person and invaded the entire atmosphere. You have no choice, Lin Feng must leave with us, said the cultivator of the Xianqi layer in an ice-cold tone while staring at Yuji. He didn't even care about making Duan Wuya, the second prince, lose face. It was still raining and Lin Feng was gradually getting soaking wet. Besides, in the atmosphere, the oppressive energy was getting denser and denser. Lin Feng was calmly standing in the rain, surrounded by those people. Lin Feng was calmly standing in the rain, surrounded by those people. There were two strong cultivators of the Xianqi layer who belonged to a dark league. These people even dared disrespect Yuji and the Imperial City Guards. It seemed like someone of extraordinary status was ordering them. That person wanted to kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng was trying to analyze the situation. Apart from the Yu and Yu clans, the Dugu clan also wanted to kill him. Of course, it could also be some of Duan Tianlang's people. Who gave you the order? Said Yuji in a cold tone. These people were imposing and aggressive. If they were there, they would take Lin Feng. Yuji didn't wait for them to reply and said, I heard that the Yu clan had close connections with leagues. You must be a dark league sent by the Yu clan. What about you? Why are you here? Said Yuji to Dubai. Yuji was wondering what Dubai was doing there because according to the latest news, Dubai was supposed to be practicing his cultivation. My goal is very simple. If he can grant me a duel, I will leave, said Dubai indifferently, which made the crowd stupefied. Dubai had come because he wanted to see how strong Lin Feng was. He wanted a duel against Lin Feng? Yuji looked at Lin Feng and saw that Lin Feng was looking at Dubai, as if he had noticed something. Lin Feng slightly nodded and said in a low voice, All right, you start. The crowd was a bit surprised. Lin Feng surprisingly agreed to Dubai's request. Dubai suddenly released a terrifying blade energy, sharp, brutal and ice-cold. Pure chi was unceasingly being absorbed into his body. A bright light was glowing around Dubai. The only arm which Dubai had wasn't an arm anymore, it looked like a blade. His arm was his blade. Energy attack. Lin Feng was a bit surprised. What a monstrously sharp energy. Dubai's blade abilities had already reached the energy dimensions. He could condense all his blade energy into his arm and transform it into a sharp blade. Coupled with his strength of the Xianqi layer, his blade was terrifying. When Yuji sensed the sword energy, a light flashed in his eyes. Dubai definitely deserved to be called the top disciple of the Celestial Academy. His force and chi were terrifying. Yuji was wondering if the situation would become dangerous for Lin Feng. A white light started shining around Lin Feng's body. Pure chi was revolving around his body. At that moment, Lin Feng hadn't broken through to the Xianqi layer yet, but could already condense pure chi. Besides, some terrifyingly sharp sword energy had also invaded the atmosphere. His powerful sword energy was extremely sharp and vast but seemed calm. The crowd had the feeling that Lin Feng at that moment wasn't Lin Feng anymore but had become his sword, as if he had fused with his sword. It was still raining but there were no raindrops around Dubai and Lin Feng's bodies. The rain couldn't get near them because they were already surrounded by the pure chi which was emitting a dazzling light. Dubai slowly raised his arm. It was like he was slowly raising a blade. At the same, Lin Feng stretched his hand and an incredible amount of chi filled the atmosphere. It transformed into a terrifying amount of pure chi. Suddenly his hand was filled with a sword made entirely of pure qi, filled with a mixture of battle energy, deadly qi and sword qi. I'm ready. After breaking through to the Qianqi layer, I have used my blade 18 times, 18 people died. I hope that you will be the first to survive, said Du Bai arrogantly. But Lin Feng ignored him. The atmosphere was dark and rainy. Lin Feng slowly closed his eyes and used his consciousness to sense the surrounding area. At the same time, in Lin Feng's mind appeared a sword. It was a black sword. It was the fatal sword of a death god. Each time Lin Feng saw that sword, his heart started pounding. It was filled with an endless quantity of pure battle qi, and pure deadly qi which could slowly be absorbed into his sword. The stronger Lin Feng became, the more he could control the black sword and the more terrifying his sword made of pure qi became. When Du Bai saw that Lin Feng was closing his eyes, releasing an even more powerful qi, but that incredible battle energy was terrifying. It seemed like it would never stop growing stronger and more powerful as it burned through the atmosphere. Du Bai was curious to see the final stage of that sword. How powerful could Lin Feng's sword get? But at the same time, he had the feeling that the power of that sword wouldn't stop increasing and would always become more powerful. Lacerate! Shouted Du Bai. He didn't continue to wait. His arm turned into a powerful blade which illuminated the atmosphere. In the air, a gigantic blade illusion appeared. Immediately after Du Bai attacked, that gigantic blade descended from the sky and seemed like it could lacerate the atmosphere. The pure qi that it contained was monstrously powerful. Lin Feng suddenly started to move. His sword made of pure qi rose into the air, and his sword energy turned into an illusionary sword which started unceasingly attacking the gigantic blade. Metallic sounds were uninterruptedly spreading through the atmosphere. These sounds were loud and distinct as if they were real. My sword can annihilate everything. Lin Feng's body started to absorb an incredible amount of battle energy. His body slowly rose into the air, but his move didn't look flashy at all. Actually, the energy was just moving towards that blade. The sword was fighting against the gigantic blade. At that moment, people raised their head and saw that gigantic blade as well as the sword collide with each other. A monstrously oppressive qi flooded the area. It was very difficult to imagine the gigantic blade and the sword doing battle. There weren't any terrifying explosions, there wasn't any flashing lights. There was only energy fighting against energy, each unable to defeat the other. How terrifying! These people are really geniuses, thought people in the crowd. Du Bai's blade skills were obvious, but Lin Feng, with his strength of the Ling Qi layer, was able to resist Du Bai's attacks. Lin Feng was slightly being pushed back. He was absorbing battle energy which kept burning around him. The crowd was gasping with astonishment. At that moment, lights flashed and Du Bai's blade disappeared. At the same time, Lin Feng's sword made of pure qi also disappeared. These two people had stopped fighting at the same time. You can compete with me to a certain extent. Unfortunately, I have to fight against Chong Bai Luo tomorrow. Let's stop for today. I hope that you will still be alive come tomorrow. When Du Bai finished talking, he turned around and left through the curtain of rain. Du Bai's lonely and solitary silhouette looked as lonely and solitary as his single arm. His heart was filled with killing intent. Just as he had said, if Lin Feng accepted to have a duel with him, he would leave. On the day after, he would fight against Chong Bai Luo and he could not refuse. I can only compete with you to a certain extent, that's what you think? Said Lin Feng while smiling coldly and opening his eyes. Immediately after, he closed his eyes again. His sword made of pure qi appeared in the sky and battle energy started burning around his body again. People in the crowd frowned. What did Lin Feng want to do? Die. At that moment Lin Feng said only one word which sounded ice cold. Lin Feng's silhouette flickered. He didn't even need his eyes to see. Everything around him was appearing clearly and distinctly in his mind. The sword descended from the sky. Immediately after, a deadly light illuminated the area. Two silhouettes were struck down by that sword without even having the time to give a horrible shriek. Lin Feng was extremely ruthless. He surprisingly hadn't said much the whole time, but he immediately killed his opponents. Two cultivators of the Qianqi layer who were hidden in the shadows were instantly killed. The people of the Dark League had come to take Lin Feng, but it wasn't to invite Lin Feng for dinner. Instead, they wanted to kill him. Therefore, as always when somebody threatened Lin Feng's life, he killed them without restraint. Kill or be killed was Lin Feng's philosophy. In a cruel world such as the cultivation world, when someone wanted to kill him, he would not be merciful and benevolent. His enemies would eventually kill him when they had the chance. If he was aggressive and ruthless when killing the people who wanted to kill him, he would live much longer. Why would he choose the first option? If someone wanted to kill him, he would just kill them first. It was an easy principle and Lin Feng was determined to stick to it. The other people's facial expressions drastically changed. Before arriving, they hadn't thought that Lin Feng's power was so terrifying. Everyone there would die if attacked by Lin Feng's sword. Lin Feng was like a death god. "Try if you dare," said another cultivator of the Xianqi layer in the crowd, whose facial expression drastically changed. An endless amount of pure qi started spinning around his arm. That arm full of pure qi was bombarding the atmosphere towards Lin Feng, but Lin Feng's sword pierced straight through the pure qi and into his opponent's heart. Back in Celestial River, Lin Feng was able to kill cultivators of the Xianqi layer. Since then, a good deal of time had passed and Lin Feng had reached the peak of the Lingqi layer. Coupled with his terrifying sword made from pure qi, how could Lin Feng be scared of cultivators at the first Xianqi layer? Even if Lin Feng didn't use his purple spirit, he could still defeat a cultivator of the first Xianqi layer. Every time his sword descended from the sky, it could instantly end several lives. It was pouring with rain, with blood dyeing the water red. It was pouring with rain, with blood dyeing the water red. Lin Feng's sword was unceasingly moving. It was dazzling and uninterruptedly killing the people who had come for him, after which they collapsed into a river of blood. However, in the distance, some ferocious-looking men wearing gray clothes were unceasingly rushing towards Lin Feng. They were fearless and it seemed like they didn't care about offering their lives to Lin Feng's sword. When they saw the countless corpses on the ground, they looked unaffected. The people of the Dark League had died. The fact that such people had been killed was terrifying. Even if a cultivator was stronger than them, a little slip of attention and some carelessness could give the Dark League a good opportunity to attack by surprise and kill him. Lin Feng looked expressionless and emotionless. It was as if he was alone with his sword. His sword was dazzling and welcomed death. It was unceasingly slaughtering people. When Lin Feng was in fusion with the earth, it was impossible for him to be careless or get distracted. He could clearly and distinctly perceive every potentially fatal attack which was coming towards him as if it was in slow motion. Lin Feng's mind was like a supercomputer as he controlled his sword. He looked extremely mysterious. What scared Lin Feng was the occasional strong cultivators of the Xianqi layer, who were carrying out surprise attacks on Lin Feng. They were not getting close to him, they were just using the Dark League's human wave tactics to compete with Lin Feng. It was a diabolic plan. Not so far in the distance, Yuji was watching the dead Dark League people who Lin Feng had killed. Yuji looked absolutely unaffected, but his heart was beating a bit faster than usual. According to the second prince, Lin Feng was extremely strong. Besides, the second prince had also said that he didn't know what would happen if Lin Feng used all his strength. But one thing was sure, defeating people of the first Xianqi layer wasn't a problem at all for Lin Feng. Therefore, Yuji wasn't worried about Lin Feng. He had only come because he wanted to see how strong Lin Feng really was. At the same time, he could also see how Lin Feng killed his opponents. Besides, Lin Feng and his attackers were diametrically opposed in terms of power and influence. They were from completely different backgrounds. Roar! A purple light suddenly invaded the atmosphere. The Dark League cultivators were not all strong cultivators at the peak of the Lingqi layer. There were also many people in the lower Lingqi layers. From the 1st to the 9th Lingqi layer, every level was present amongst the attackers. They were unceasingly attacking Lin Feng and unceasingly being slaughtered. The purple light was soaring through the air. In an instant, many people disappeared into the purple light and were melted into nothingness. They all vanished without leaving a trace. A strong cultivator of the Xianqi layer narrowed his eyes. Lin Feng was stronger than they had expected. Fortunately, they had prepared a perfect plan. Lin Feng was definitely going to die. In the vast area surrounding Lin Feng, The cultivators who were near him had all been swallowed by the purple light, but enemies continued to charge at him from every direction. It seemed like they wanted Lin Feng to run out of qi in a prolonged battle. "Die!" shouted a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer in a deep voice. Immediately, the whole crowd threw themselves at Lin Feng and attacked him. A rumbling noise started to fill the atmosphere. An endless ocean of attacks was moving from the distance towards Lin Feng. The purple lake was still surrounding Lin Feng. Lin Feng took a huge step forwards. His silhouette flickered, and in a flash, two silhouettes were consumed by the purple light surrounding him. Another group of people didn't wait for Lin Feng to take the initiative and attack them. They were rushing towards him. They were rushing towards Lin Feng as if they didn't care about dying. At the same time, a few silhouettes jumped into the air and unleashed a gigantic silver net. The threads of that net were extremely solid and extremely sharp, just like a multitude of sharp razors. If someone got captured in that net, their body would end up tragically torn apart. "Rise!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. The purple lake turned into a storm of purple snakes which blocked the net. At the same time, many snake silhouettes flickered and moved towards the people who were holding the net. On the ground, there were many other people attacking Lin Feng. At the same time, the cultivator of the Xian Qi layer attacked as well. A sickle illusion appeared behind his back while pure qi was fluctuating in the atmosphere. His body transformed into an illusion, and an incredible quantity of deadly sharp qi emerged. "Moonlight hook!" shouted the Xian Qi layer cultivator while swiping his hand towards Lin Feng. In a flash, what seemed like countless crescent moons appeared in his hand and started moving towards Lin Feng as they sliced through the atmosphere. Each of the crescent moons contained a terrifying qi. If they came into contact with someone, they would easily slice that person's body in half. Fizzes. The sickle edges came into contact with the bodies of members of the Dark League between the cultivator and Lin Feng. These crescent moons passed by two people. Blood filled the air and they let out horrible shrieks. They had just been killed. These subtle yet terrifying sounds were piercing into people's eardrums. A blade made of pure qi. Besides, it's a perfect match for his spirit. He's extremely strong, thought Lin Feng while shivering. The terrifying purple spirit wouldn't be able to block these sharp crescent moon attacks. "Pierce!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. His sword started emitted a dazzling light. Lin Feng had cut that body into two, not using a limb, but by using his whole body as a sword. Lin Feng a moment before wasn't a human, instead he became a sword, an extremely cruel sword. "Sword fusion," whispered the cultivator. His heart was violently shaking. A cultivator at the Ling Qi layer was in a frenzy of slaughter, constantly attacking and defending himself, and he was killing so many people, it had become a bloodbath. The ground was littered with corpses. Besides, he had used his entire body to cut another cultivator's body in two, and that cultivator was at the Xian Qi layer. That move had been way too amazing and shocking. The other person could hardly believe it. He only saw Lin Feng, who slowly turned around and whose body was covered with deep wounds. Blood was unceasingly flowing from his body, but it seemed like Lin Feng didn't even realize how severe his injuries were. Lin Feng's two piercingly cold eyes were staring at the other Xian Qi layer cultivator. His heart was brutally shaking. It was the first time that he had ever felt terror when faced with a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer. "Who sent you to kill me?" asked Lin Feng with an ice-cold tone. He was oppressing his interlocutor. "Who sent you to kill me?" asked Lin Feng with an ice-cold tone. He was oppressing his interlocutor. It was such a precise and accurate plan. So many cultivators of the Ling Qi layer had come to kill Lin Feng. One cultivator of the Xian Qi layer had attacked him directly, while another one, an assassin, was trying to kill Lin Feng from the back with such a precise attack it could have been fatal. Besides, it clearly proved that they wanted to kill Lin Feng. However, it wasn't easy to capture or kill Lin Feng. That group of strong cultivators didn't want Lin Feng alive on that day. He definitely had to die. Fortunately, Lin Feng had more than one card up his sleeve. Even though that group of people was extremely strong, it was the same result. They hadn't been able to kill Lin Feng. The ones who thought of that plot probably would have never thought that things would happen the way they did. After all the monstrous planning and powerful traps, Lin Feng, against all expectations, was still alive. He was severely injured because of all the crescent moon sickles. The blades had injured him. None of them were illusions and all contained incredible attack power. The attack had sliced through Lin Feng's flesh and muscles. If he hadn't used his spirit to slow the attack and if he didn't have a quick reaction, the injury would have been even more serious. At that moment he didn't know if he could still fight. That cultivator of the Xianqi layer was narrowing his eyes, which were twinkling, as if he was thinking about something. Die! When Lin Feng saw his interlocutor's eyes, a monstrous amount of deadly qi rose into the air. A distinct sword light appeared and he immediately rushed forward. At that moment he had become a sword which could annihilate anything in its path. It seems like my sword skills have become much more powerful, thought Lin Feng. Even though he had already reached the sword fusion dimension, Lin Feng was still able to improve his visualizations. He could also try to understand his celestial book in greater detail. Lin Feng's cultivation level was much too weak for him to understand the sword that was in suspension. He still had much to learn. What it meant was that he could explore sword force, energy attacks, sword fusion, and swords in general to gain a deeper understanding, which would enable him to become stronger. He still didn't have a very high cultivation level, therefore, he still had to put a great deal of work into his understanding. He could use this to increase the power of his sword energy and attacks. After having fought with so many opponents in the battle from a moment before, Lin Feng had the impression that his sword fusion had become more powerful, as if he had broken through to another layer in his sword dimension. The assassin at the Xianqi layer could sense Lin Feng's terrifying sword energy. His heart was shaking. At the moment when Lin Feng had killed his partner at the Xianqi layer, his heart had already lost hope. Deep in his heart, he had the feeling that he wasn't as strong as Lin Feng. His vitality, ardor and battle energy had weakened a lot. Even if Lin Feng's strength was about the same as his, defeat was already in sight. Yu clan or Dugu clan? Lin Feng took a step forwards while releasing more of his sword energy which whistled as it pierced through the air. If I told you, would you let me go? Asked that cultivator of the Xianqi layer who couldn't stand the pressure any longer. He had surprisingly voiced his thoughts. It was clear that he thought that Lin Feng was stronger than him, so he surprisingly asked if Lin Feng would let him go. On the corner of Lin Feng's mouth appeared a mocking smile. He said, sounding cold and detached, "A moment ago you tried to kill me, for that I will require an arm, then after you tell me you can leave with your life." While he was talking, his sword energy didn't disperse. It was still as piercingly cold as before as it pressed against the cultivator. That cultivator's heartbeat slightly accelerated. He needed to pay the price of an arm? "You only have 3 seconds to make up your mind," said Lin Feng, still sounding cold and detached. 1, 2. Lin Feng counted up to 2 and took a step forward, as if he was about to attack. "I will tell you," yelled that person who couldn't bear the terrifying pressure. Immediately after, he gave a horrible shriek. The sound of cracking bones spread in the air while he forcefully crushed all the bones in his arm into dust. His arm started hanging loosely. He had destroyed the use of that arm. Sometimes the stronger a cultivator was, the more he was afraid of death. Even if they couldn't advance their cultivation anymore, they could at least enjoy the pleasures of a long life. The other people from the Dark League are sent by a few high-ranking officials. I don't know who sent them though. This time I just came to help. My task was to kill you. If I knew that they couldn't defeat you, I wouldn't have come," said the man very reluctantly. While gnashing his teeth, he added, "The person who hired me belongs to the Yu clan. He's the 5th master, and he ordered your death." "Who's the 5th master?" asked Lin Feng. "Yu Tianxing," replied Lin Feng's interlocutor, and immediately after added, "I answered to all of your questions. Now can I leave?" "Get lost," said Lin Feng. The cultivator was happy. He quickly turned around and his silhouette flickered into the distance. But at that moment, a deadly energy suddenly emerged and made his heart vibrate. He abruptly turned around and wanted to move his right hand, but at that moment he realized that he had crushed his right arm and couldn't use it. He could no longer absorb pure qi. Zirr. A silver spear penetrated into and pierced through his chest. Suddenly someone who looked extremely calm and cold appeared. It was the officer of the Imperial City Guards, Yuji. He had just killed him. "Are you also an assassin from the Celestial Academy?" asked that person while staring at Yuji. Blood was flowing from his body. People who come from the Celestial Academy obey His Highness orders, but you instead obey the orders of the Yu clan. Why would we let you off? That voice pierced through his ears, and immediately after, the silver long spear moved and destroyed his internal organs. The internal organs of the cultivator of the Xianqi layer were crushed. He died a miserable death. Besides, Yuji still looked calm. He then calmly pulled his spear out from the corpse. He turned around and immediately looked at Lin Feng. If the Qixia Marquis cannot kill his enemies, I am willing to do it for you, said Yuji calmly, but his eyes looked like that of a venomous snake. That venomous side rarely appeared, but Lin Feng had seen him twice. He had also only seen the spear twice. The first time he had seen that spear was when he killed Meng Han. The second time was a moment ago when he had killed the cultivator of the Xianqi layer. Thank you, said Lin Feng indifferently. Immediately after, he turned around and started walking away, slowly because of his exhaustion. Cough cough. Coughing sounds filled the air. Blood dripped from Lin Feng's wounds and his blood mixed with the rainwater. When Yuji saw Lin Feng walk slowly because of exhaustion, a light flashed in his eyes. He was still wondering if, a moment before, Lin Feng had purposely given everything to scare away his last opponent. At that moment, Lin Feng wasn't capable of battling against a cultivator of the Xianqi layer. However, an assassin of the Xianqi layer was just so scared of Lin Feng that he destroyed the use of his own arm. In the end, he ended up as a corpse on the ground, someone whose greatest fear was sent to his next life. At that moment, in the lovesick forest, some young people were calmly sitting under the pavilion on the lake. Once in a while, they were drinking some lovesick alcohol. Now is the right time, I think, said Yun Tianxing while throwing a rock into the water, which created small waves which moved in all four directions. Don't worry, with all the troops that you sent, Lin Feng will definitely die, said Yu Tiancheng with a detached attitude. He was the one who had had the idea to assassinate Lin Feng, and Yu Tianxing was the one to create the plan. At the same time, they had used their influence to recruit some people from the Dark Leagues to kill Lin Feng for them. After Lin Feng had met Lu Tsonglan, and because Meng Qing wasn't by Lin Feng's side, they had decided it was the right time to assassinate Lin Feng. You're right, Lin Feng is already dead, said Yu Tianxing while nodding. He sounded like he was convincing himself of Lin Feng's death from the trap. At that moment in the distance, they heard some steps approaching, which made Yu Tianxing's heartbeat accelerate. He turned around and saw someone moving towards them at full speed. Is Lin Feng already dead? Asked Yu Tianxing while standing up. That person raised their head, looked at Yu Tianxing, who looked so impatient, and the person's facial expression rigidified itself. They were afraid to speak out. Huh. When Yu Tianxing saw his interlocutor's silence, he had an ominous prediction and shouted, I asked you a question. Master Yu, Lin Feng hasn't died yet. He escaped alive, but he was severely injured, said that person, trembling with fear, which stupefied Yu Tianxing, who said, He's only injured. How come he's not dead? What are you guys doing, damn? Surprisingly, not one of you bothered to chase and kill him. Everybody is dead. They were all slaughtered, said that person in a low voice while lowering their head. Yu Tianxing's heart started pounding. They had died. And Lin Feng was only injured. He had just assumed that Lin Feng had only managed to escape while injured, but then, a terrifying feeling invaded his heart. Lin Feng wasn't dead. Considering Lin Feng's temperament, if Lin Feng learned that the one who had sent people to kill him was Yu Tianxing, he would never let him off. From that moment on, he had to be extremely careful. Lin Feng was sitting cross-legged in a cultivation room of the central tower. Pure qi was unceasingly filling the atmosphere and penetrating into Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng was sitting cross-legged in a cultivation room of the central tower. Pure qi was unceasingly filling the atmosphere and penetrating into Lin Feng's body. Cultivators could recover from injuries much faster with the help of qi. Besides, the higher their cultivation level was, the less time they required to recover. After having broken through to a higher cultivation layer, even if a cultivator had their arm cut off, they could recover it with enough time. There were even some rumors which said that even if the emperor wanted to die, Unless every part of him was completely destroyed, he would come back to life. Lin Feng was severely injured, but since he had penetrated into the earth dimension, things had changed. His muscles were stronger and he could recover much faster. In just one day, the chi of heaven and earth could heal his wounds. He was already healed from his wounds. Besides, he had consumed a lot of his chi during the battle. After having been healed by the pure chi, his body continued to absorb insane quantities of refined pure chi, which penetrated directly into his body through his blood vessels. At that moment, Lin Feng's body was enveloped, from head to toe, by a bright and dazzling white light. That dazzling white light was the chi which Lin Feng condensed into pure chi. Lin Feng had already finished the process of transforming his chi into pure chi which he could control. Once all the chi inside his body was completely transformed into pure chi, he would be able to learn a skill which he could use once he broke through the Ling Qi layer and entered the Xian Qi layer. The moment when Lin Feng would break through to the Xian Qi layer was growing closer. Besides, in the room above Lin Feng's room, the chi of heaven and earth was pouring into the atmosphere. The door of the room was slowly opening itself and a silhouette was emerging. That person was precisely Qiong Bai Luo. Immediately after, he jumped up in the air and used pure chi to propel his body forward. Qiong Bai Luo then glanced at the crowd with an arrogant expression in his eyes. At that moment in the square, a crowd had already gathered. Today was precisely the day of his challenge to Dubai. Qiong Bai Luo is so confident. How come he is so certain that he is going to win? People raised their heads and looked at the silhouette moving through the sky. The expression in Qiong Bai Luo's eyes was sharp, as if he was certain that he was going to become the top-ranked disciple of the Celestial Academy. "Dubai, where are you?" said Qiong Bai Luo. His voice was unceasingly rolling through the atmosphere in all directions. It resonated to every single corner of the academy so that everybody could hear it. After a short moment, the atmosphere became silent again. In the distance, a terrifying blade energy burst forth. In the sky, there was a bright and gigantic blade illusion that was slicing through the sky. Immediately after, the crowd noticed that in the middle of that blade illusion, there was a single silhouette. It was Dubai. His facial expression looked extremely sharp, like a blade. Dubai soared through the air and eventually arrived at the public square where everybody had gathered. That gigantic blade illusion surrounded him as he moved. He had fused with his blade and was one with the gigantic blade. The crowd who was on the ground could feel the terrifying blade energy on their skin. It was extremely brutal. Seems like the battle is going to be extraordinary. Everybody in the crowd looked impatient to watch the battle. Qiong Bai Luo was arrogant and confident in his abilities. Dubai was swift, fierce, and extremely aggressive. That battle was definitely going to be a battle to the death. In the frame of that unavoidable confrontation, people wanted to see who was going to become the first-ranked disciple of the academy. Who would end up in the top position, Qiong Bai Luo or Dubai? Dubai, after this, you will not be the best disciple of the academy anymore, said Qiong Bai Luo while looking at Dubai's blade. As before, he was full of confidence. Whether this will happen or not doesn't depend on your big mouth. Today, if you defeat me, you will become the first in the ranking. Of course, I wouldn't get ahead of yourself, said Dubai in an extremely aggressive tone. He had been the first ranked in the academy for such a long time. Losing the top position would be a humiliation. Not only will I defeat you today, but I will also defeat Wen Ao Shui, Du Gushang, and Lin Feng. I will fight against all of them, and I let everyone know who the best student of the academy is. No need to waste time. Last time, Du Gushang fought against Lin Feng and couldn't withstand a single blow. Du Gushang cannot compete with us. Wen Ao Shui isn't weak, but he is still at the 9th Ling Qi layer. He has not grown stronger and is still weaker than us. The only one who represents a real threat for us is Lin Feng, but yesterday I went out to have a battle against him. He was the first person to resist my blade. He is not far from us in strength, but he can only resist a single strike, that's all. If you can defeat me, you don't need to defeat anyone else in the academy, said Dubai arrogantly and egocentrically. In his eyes, amongst the three others, none of them could hold a torch to the two on stage. Even though Lin Feng was quite skilled with the strength Budi saw, Lin Feng still couldn't compete with them. When the crowd heard Dubai, they were stupefied. Indeed, before Lin Feng left for Yangzhou City, he had defeated Du Gushang in one move. Even though much time had passed, Du Gushang still couldn't compete with Lin Feng. Besides, amongst these people, Lin Feng was the only person who Du Bai held in esteem. However, he still thought that Lin Feng could only resist a single blade attack. Only one blade, the second, would kill him. If Chong Bai Luo defeated Du Bai, he could defeat everybody else. He didn't need to fight anymore. He could immediately become the top disciple of the Celestial Academy and enjoy all of the glory it entitled. It's better this way, I won't need to waste my time, said Chong Bai Luo in an ice-cold way, and then added, Du Bai, let's fight. Fight! 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 Shouted Du Bai furiously, as if he had turned into a madman. His blade twinkled in the air and an endless amount of blade energy emerged. A gigantic blade spirit appeared behind Du Bai, who was in fusion with his blade. Blade force and chi invaded and bombarded the atmosphere, moving straight towards Chong Bai Luo. However, Chong Bai Luo wasn't moving at all. What a terrifying strength, thought people in the crowd as their hearts started shaking. It wasn't surprising that Du Bai had been the top-ranked disciple of the academy for such a long time. His reputation was well-deserved. Even if you use stronger blade energy, so what? Said Chong Bai Luo while smiling coldly. His blue void spirit appeared as random raindrops. These raindrops slowly started to envelop Chong Bai Luo's entire body. It was a cloudless and sunny day, but not around Chong Bai Luo's body. It seemed like rain was pouring around him, but it did not reach the ground. The blade energy was approaching the raindrops, but when they collided, the blade energy disappeared. All the raindrops suddenly looked like a rippling lake. How can he do that? Chong Bai Luo's spirit is so complex. The people watching felt their hearts slightly twitch for a second. Chong Bai Luo hadn't moved. The blade energy penetrated into the raindrops and disappeared. Just a coincidence, that's all, said Du Bai while smiling coldly. In the air, he slowly raised his arm and condensed all his blade energy and his blade spirit's power into his arm. At that moment, Du Bai transformed into a gigantic blade. A gigantic deadly blade. He started walking swiftly through the air. Whistling noises were spreading through the atmosphere. Du Bai was just like a blade that was flying towards Chong Bai Luo. At the same time, his arm slashed down with the illusion of a gigantic blade, lacerating the atmosphere. Blue void raindrops, said Chong Bai Luo quickly. Raindrops suddenly started emerging from his spirit and invaded the atmosphere as if it had started to rain. The gigantic blade crashed against the rain. The blade felt a surge of resistant force inside the rain. The blade could only slowly move forwards. That endless blue void rain seemed to provide amazing protection. At the same time, Chong Bai Luo started running forwards and shouted coldly, "Blue void underworld." In a flash, a blue void with raindrops fell down from the sky and immediately appeared in the air above Du Bai and then shrouded his body in rain. Du Bai's body could be seen surrounded by raindrops. He looked astonished. Du Bai transformed into a blade which whistled through the air. However, when it collided with the curtain of rain, his body started shaking violently. He was prisoner inside the blue void raindrops as if it was a cage. "Rain of the underworld. Die!" shouted Chong Bai Luo coldly. When he said the word die, the raindrops suddenly started to change. These raindrops weren't rain anymore. They had turned into razor-sharp blades. "Cut!" shouted Du Bai furiously. His body started shining with an infinite and dazzling light. A bright blade light filled the atmosphere around him, so people couldn't see clearly what was happening inside. But in a flash, Du Bai's silhouette appeared again. He was still standing in the sky, but blood was unceasingly flowing from wounds all over his body. He was covered with blood from head to toe. How terrifying! People in the crowd were shaking. That blue void spirit was extremely powerful. Du Bai couldn't compete with it. Chong Bai Luo was the best disciple of the Celestial Academy. "I lost," said Du Bai while looking at Chong Bai Luo, who looked extremely proud and arrogant. Du Bai's voice was low. He had been defeated and it had been a crushing defeat. "I lost," said Du Bai while looking at Chong Bai Luo, who looked extremely proud and arrogant. Du Bai's voice was low. He had been defeated and it had been a crushing defeat. Bai Luo's Blue Void Underworld and Blue Void Spirit were monstrously strong. He could firmly seal parts of the atmosphere. His Blue Void raindrops could form into a cage of raindrops. Besides, once there was a prisoner inside that cage, it could transform the raindrops into razor-shaped blades that attacked the prisoner. If Bai had been a little bit weaker, he would have died. From now on, the best disciple of the Celestial Academy is Bai Luo, said Bai sorrowfully. He had always been first in the ranking of the Celestial Academy. Besides, he was also one of the first students to break through the Ling Qi layer and enter the Xian Qi layer. He used to think that if he couldn't do something, other people would be even less capable. However, Bai Luo had also always been a genius and had always been a close second. Bai Luo had always been introverted, discreetly practicing cultivation, but after he had broken through to the Xian Qi layer, he had become a completely different person. He had become extremely arrogant, and right after breaking through to the Xian Qi layer, he had immediately challenged Bai to a battle. Bai had just thought that Bai Luo had grown arrogant with success, but reality had been different from expectation. Bai Luo had defeated Bai very easily. He hadn't even taken the battle seriously. People had the same thoughts as Bai. Bai couldn't compete with Bai Luo. If Bai Luo wasn't the best student of the academy, who else could it be? When Ao Shui, Du Gushang Linfeng, where are they? Said Bai Luo coldly and arrogantly while glancing at the crowd on the ground. If these people had come, Bai Luo wouldn't have minded fighting against them. That was a way for him to show people how strong he was. However, nobody replied. Du Gushang couldn't even withstand one of Lin Feng's attacks. How could he have the courage to come and fight? When Ao Shui just hadn't bothered to go. Concerning Lin Feng, he was still in his cultivation room. They're just a bunch of nobodies. As expected, apart from Bai, the others cannot even compete with me anymore. They are all tiny little insects, they are worthless. When Bai Luo finished insulting the other strong disciples, he started walking away. After a short moment, his silhouette disappeared from the crowd's field of vision. While looking at the vanishing silhouette, people's eyes were twinkling. The imperial city was really lively and animated. Even though Bai Luo had just broken through to the Xian Qi layer, with his amazingly strong spirit, he could definitely rival the 8 high officials. Finally, there was someone who was as monstrous as the 8 high officials in the Celestial Academy. While looking at the disappearing silhouette, Bai's eyes were filled with disappointment. They were both of the Xian Qi layer. Besides, he had broken through to the Xian Qi layer before Bai Luo, but there was still a big gap between them. Bai Luo was monstrously strong. Bai Luo's spirit gave him a huge advantage in battle. It was clear with only a glance. Bai's blade spirit was also extremely strong, but Bai Luo's spirit had confined him so easily that he hadn't even had the opportunity to bring his blade spirit into play. At that moment, a rumbling noise emerged in the atmosphere and broke the silence. People could only see a room of the cultivation tower open itself. Immediately after, a handsome young man appeared. He was wearing a long white chong pao. His hair was fluttering in the wind. The expression in his eyes looked profound, deep and proud. Lin Feng. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng had come out of the cultivation room, precisely at the moment that Bai Luo left. Did he do that on purpose? Thought the crowd. Bai Luo had challenged Lin Feng and the others. It was unlikely that Lin Feng hadn't heard the news, but he didn't appear. Could it be that he had waited for Bai Luo to leave and then came out, as if he wanted to avoid Bai Luo? But the crowd could understand why Lin Feng would want to avoid Bai Luo. Lin Feng only had the strength of the Ling Qi layer. Fighting against a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer would have been the same as committing suicide. Bai Luo was monstrously strong, and that was a fact. Lin Feng could already put pressure on Bai, which was already impressive. When Lin Feng came out of his cultivation room, he had also noticed the crowd who was looking at him. He couldn't help but be surprised. However, he ignored the crowd and started leaving. Wait. At that moment, a voice emerged in the atmosphere which made Lin Feng stop. What do you think, are blade and sword spirits strong or not? Asked Bai. His spirit was a blade spirit and Lin Feng was a sword cultivator. To a certain extent, they belonged to the same category of cultivator. Of course, that was just Bai's opinion. Even though Lin Feng practiced sword skills, he didn't have a sword spirit. Of course, replied Lin Feng without even turning his head. Well then, why did Chong Bai Luo defeat me so easily? I didn't even have the slightest chance. Asked Du Bai towards Lin Feng, yet it sounded like he was questioning himself. His faith in blades had been shaken. Strength, no matter the result of a battle, is not only connected to the spirit. If Chong Bai Luo defeated you, it's not only because of your spirit. Determination in one's skill level is also important to win a battle, said Lin Feng indifferently. The spirit was only one of the things that could influence the flow of a battle. It wasn't an absolute indicator of who would win a battle. For example, a cultivator of the first Ling Qi layer would never be able to defeat a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. Even when it came to cultivators of the same level, an extremely strong determination, willpower, courage, focus and level of skill were all factors which could determine the outcome of a battle. Besides, these factors didn't have anything to do with the spirit. That was Lin Feng's opinion, which corresponded to his personality. Even though he only had the strength of the Ling Qi layer, he would still use his sword to fight a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer such as Du Bai. Did it mean that Lin Feng's sword spirit was stronger than Du Bai's blade spirit? Of course not. He had no sword spirit. What you mean is that I, as a person, cannot rival Chong Bai Luo, and it has nothing to do with our spirits? Du Bai's voice sounded a bit cold and a blade energy started floating around Lin Feng's body. He was asking Lin Feng only because he was doubting himself and his spirit. Besides, he had been defeated by Chong Bai Luo, but he couldn't tolerate such words coming from Lin Feng's mouth. You asked me and I gave you my answer. I am just telling you from what I have experienced, said Lin Feng when he noticed Du Bai's anger. Lin Feng didn't refute Du Bai's words and instead his voice started to grow colder. Du Bai had been defeated by Chong Bai Luo and was using Lin Feng to vent his anger. Could he humiliate and bully him as he wished? Du Bai had asked Lin Feng a question and Lin Feng didn't even feel like replying but still gave him an honest answer. Humph. How arrogant. Don't think that because you are a little bit popular you can let it go to your head. The fact that you can resist one of my blade attacks doesn't mean that you can resist a second one, said Du Bai in an ice-cold way. He was clearly threatening Lin Feng. Arrogant. Lin Feng was smiling coldly in his heart. On that day, Lin Feng had stopped his blade attack. But could it be that Du Bai thought that Lin Feng could only survive one attack? And on top of that he thought Lin Feng could not attack him in return? Du Bai sounded arrogant and threatening. He wanted to regain the prestige that he had lost a moment before, and was using Lin Feng as a stepping stone. He had just gone through a crushing defeat against Chong Bai Luo, and needed to regain his image. In 3 days Lin Feng will be waiting for you here. At that moment we will see if I can survive a second attack, said Lin Feng indifferently. Immediately after he started to leave. However, when the crowd heard Lin Feng they were stupefied. Lin Feng was just like Chong Bai Luo. He was challenging Du Bai. Du Bai had said that Lin Feng was arrogant, and that he wouldn't be able to survive a second blade attack, but now Lin Feng was challenging him. Oh. The Dongling district was situated in the most eastern place of the imperial city. The hill of Dongling also had an altitude of a few thousand meters. From there, people could look into the distance. At that moment, Lin Feng's silhouette appeared on the Dongling hill, but he wasn't enjoying the view at all. Instead, he was just standing there looking up at the sky. A moment before, Lin Feng could have fought against the injured Du Bai, but he chose to wait. When Lin Feng was still in the cultivation room practicing, he was asking himself what new skill he should learn. He was only an inch away from breaking through to the Xian Qi layer. What skill should he practice to battle with the Xian Qi layer and above? Lin Feng was confident that breaking through to the Xian Qi layer wouldn't be an issue. At that moment, his problem was choosing a suitable skill to learn. The cultivator of the Zun Qi layer had given him many extremely strong skills from his memories. There were a lot of Xian level skills and even Tian level skills, but the problem was, would Lin Feng ever break through to the Tian Qi layer? There was also no problem in the type of skills he could learn. Lin Feng could learn all types of skills and techniques. His celestial spirit granted him the power of advanced comprehension. He could practice different hand skills to increase his power during unarmed combat. He was already an expert at using swords and was already stronger than most sword cultivators. Should he pick a sword skill? He could basically practice any sort of skill. That wasn't the problem. The only problem was that he could not decide what type of skill to learn. Amongst the memories of the cultivator of the Zunqi layer, there were many extremely powerful skills, which belonged to different categories. Amongst the memories of the cultivator of the Zunqi layer, there were many extremely powerful skills, which belonged to different categories. There was one sword skill called Sword of the Dead Tree. Its pure qi left a path of devastation. It was a skill which was specifically used to slaughter people. There was also an ice skill which freezed the entire world. It would freeze opponents along with their pure qi. There was a medical technique which could bring the dead back to life. A cultivator who knew that skill could bring someone who had recently died back to the world of the living. The skill came down to condensing pure qi to heal all injuries of the body. Those who learnt that skill were very few. The people who learnt it were revered. Those who knew such an incredible medical technique were appreciated by other cultivators. Many people tried to gain their favor as it may save their lives. After all, when getting wounded in battle, especially because of a monstrously strong attack, it was normally impossible for a cultivator to completely recover. Even if the external body seemed to have completely recovered, it could have caused injuries to the cultivation. But Lin Feng wasn't interested in a medical technique. He didn't have the heart of a saint. This skill would affect his entire future, and could even change his destiny. Lin Feng took that matter extremely seriously. All the memories of the cultivator of the Zunqi layer were of extremely high-level skills. It was possible that Lin Feng wouldn't need to learn a new skill before breaking through to the Zunqi layer. Lin Feng was extremely far from that cultivator's level. The strong cultivator of the Zunqi layer was a legend. Such strong cultivators could flatten mountains. The sun was once again rising into the sky, but on the Dongling Hill, there was a motionless and lonely silhouette. His eyes had remained closed throughout the whole period. The scorching sun was progressively getting higher in the sky and heating the world beneath. At the top of the Dongling Hill, the temperature was rising as well. There was absolutely no place to go to avoid the scorching hot sun. The sun was obviously incredibly powerful. The sun would always rise and set, no matter how strong people were. They couldn't stop the sun from rising. At that moment, Lin Feng opened his eyes and a realization flashed through his eyes. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Surprisingly, Lin Feng was looking directly at the scorching sun that was high in the sky. "All right, it will be you," said Lin Feng looking calm. Cosmos burning Sunday. Lin Feng would be able to practice under the scorching sunlight and absorb the pure qi of the sun. Then he could unleash his power and burn the universe. Lin Feng had made up his mind, forgetting the other skills. The Cosmos Burning Sun skill wasn't an extremely high level. It was a D-level skill of lower quality, but it could be improved. The stronger the pure qi of the sun was, the stronger the attack. The more powerful the pure qi of the sun was, the more brutal the attack was. If a cultivator managed to master the technique to an extremely high level, they could ignite the sky into a sea of flames. That skill became more and more powerful with time, but it was very hard to meet the requirements to practice it. Absorbing the pure qi of the sun would cause an intense heat to constantly burn inside the body. It required a lot of perseverance and determination. But Lin Feng had already made up his mind and didn't hesitate. He immediately sat down cross-legged on the top of the Dongling Hill. He started practicing the skill according to the instructions in his memories. Pure qi was revolving around his body. Sunlight was moving towards Lin Feng's body suddenly. There were many threads of hot light which started to move towards him. Immediately after, he quickly absorbed these threads of sunlight into his body. Not long after, Lin Feng's body was already dazzling. It seemed like his body had transformed into a pool of water, absorbing all of the hot sunlight from the heavens. An endless stream of sunlight continued penetrating into his body and merging with the qi inside his body. The pure qi inside his body was starting to burn with an intense heat. At the same time, Lin Feng's body was enduring the terrifying temperature. The scorching sunlight was mixing with the pure qi, and at the same time, it was also penetrating into his flesh and muscles. The Cosmos Burning Sun was a skill which required sunlight. Therefore, while learning and practicing the skill, the more scorching hot the sun was, the better it was to practice. Besides, when it was cloudy and rainy or even during the night, there was always sunlight present, but it was much weaker. Unless a cultivator could master the skill to an extremely high level, it was very difficult to constantly attract the sunlight from the surroundings and make it flow steadily into the body. 2 days flowed by. Lin Feng had spent 3 days on the Dongling Hill. 3 days also meant Lin Feng's battle against Du Bai was near. Lin Feng opened his eyes and a resplendent light, as dazzling as the sun, could be seen. Besides, around Lin Feng's body was his pure qi. It already contained small threads of sunlight inside. Therefore it was magnificent. Cosmos burning sun. It took me a while to understand it clearly, thought Lin Feng. That skill was monstrously powerful. It was an amazing skill, but Lin Feng still thought that it took too long to learn. Actually, nobody else would have been able to learn it any faster than Lin Feng. He was too quick. In just a very short time, 2 days, Lin Feng's pure qi already absorbed a great deal of sunlight, and he was now able to passively absorb the power of the sun. Lin Feng stood up and looked at the sun. It was dazzling. Finally, Lin Feng would one day be as dazzling as the sun. Even the sky and the earth had to fear the power of the sun. Lin Feng's body moved and he started rushing down the Dongling Hill. In a flash, his silhouette disappeared and he appeared at the foot of the mountain, moving towards the Celestial Academy. After Lin Feng left, 2 silhouettes rushed to the top of the Dongling Hill. They had come to see where Lin Feng was practicing his cultivation. They both took a breath and their eyes were suddenly filled with wonder and amazement. What skill did he learn? Asked one of them in a low voice, looking astonished. At the place where Lin Feng was sat, the ground was scorched and flames were starting to rise. The mark was clear and distinct, besides the qi was strange. At that moment, smoke started to rise from the top of Dongling Hill. Lin Feng had no idea of what was happening after he left. He hadn't paid attention to the place where he was sitting and hadn't seen that it was now on fire. At the Celestial Academy, on the vast and broad public square, outside of the cultivation tower, many people had already gathered and were waiting. The crowd hadn't forgotten that Lin Feng and Du Bai's battle was going to happen on that day. The other day, Qiong Bai Luo had defeated Du Bai magnificently. Qiong Bai Luo had become the top ranked in the academy. However, the one who used to be the best disciple of the Celestial Academy couldn't accept his crushing defeat against Qiong Bai Luo, who had used him as a stepping stone. He had asked Lin Feng if he had lost because of his spirit, but Lin Feng had said that it was more the weakness of the person than the weakness of the spirit which had infuriated Du Bai. He then insulted and threatened Lin Feng. All of these things had led to the challenge. It resembled Lin Feng and He Mo's battle. People had seen Lin Feng for the first time back then and had noticed how carefree he was. Not much time had passed yet Lin Feng was already well known within the academy. However, his opponents were not people like He Mo, who were at the bottom of the rankings of the academy. Instead, his opponents were those at the top of the rankings, such as Du Bai, who had already broken through to the Shanqi layer. People were looking forward to that battle. It was definitely going to be incredible. Du Bai had threatened Lin Feng and said that just because he could survive one blade attack, it didn't necessarily mean that he would be able to survive a second. Very quickly there would be an answer to this. In the sky, brutal and violent blade energy emerged. It was extremely sharp and had enveloped every single thing in the atmosphere. That blade energy made people's hearts feel extremely cold, as if they were being forced to kneel before it. The crowd was gazing into the distance and saw that Du Bai was riding on a blade of pure qi. That blade was emitting whistling sounds in the air, and it looked majestic. At that moment, Du Bai didn't look dispirited like when he had fought against Qiong Bai Luo. He looked arrogant and again, but his eyes were filled with hatred. He was using Lin Feng to wipe away the humiliation he had endured. He wasn't the best in the academy anymore, but it didn't mean that he had to lose all of his prestige and reputation. Du Bai was moving towards the cultivation tower, in the sky above the crowd. He coldly glanced at the crowd, smiled coldly and said, "Since he doesn't dare to show his face, it means that Lin Feng from the very beginning is just coward who likes to talk big. It seems like I overestimated him, and it was a mistake to come here today." The crowd glanced right and left and then everybody started whispering. Lin Feng really hadn't come. Could it be that Du Bai was right? Lin Feng was just a coward? Last time he didn't fight against Chong Bai Luo and now, he wasn't fighting Du Bai either. Your cultivation and lack of skill is disappointing. It no wonder that you lost against Chong Bai Luo, said a voice which filled the atmosphere and stupefied him. He turned around and saw a figure at the top of the cultivation tower. Lin Feng could be clearly seen atop the cultivation tower. Smiling coldly, he said, "I've been here since the beginning, but surprisingly, you weren't even able to sense my presence. Yet you surprisingly have the courage to say such arrogant things. You just like to show off, nothing more. It's not surprising that you lost the first position in the rankings." Lin Feng was standing at the top of the cultivation tower. Lin Feng despised Du Bai. He definitely occupied a commanding position which perfectly matched his manner of speaking. Lin Feng sounded like he was reprimanding Du Bai. Lin Feng was standing at the top of the cultivation tower. Lin Feng despised Du Bai. He definitely occupied a commanding position which perfectly matched his manner of speaking. Lin Feng sounded like he was reprimanding Du Bai. The crowd and Du Bai were a bit surprised. Lin Feng had surprisingly been at the top of the cultivation tower the entire time. The fact that the crowd hadn't noticed him was excusable, but Du Bai surprisingly hadn't noticed him either. Even though he was at the Xianqi lair, it seemed like he lacked many things. Besides, Lin Feng was only a cultivator at the Lingqi lair. Du Bai's facial expression was hideous. He raised his head and glared at Lin Feng. He then said in an ice-cold way, "Arrogant or not, let's fight." "Humph." Lin Feng smiled coldly. His sword energy was swift and fierce. Suddenly, a sword illusion appeared under Lin Feng's feet. He used the sword to fly through the sky. That sword was made from condensed pure qi. Lin Feng could already condense pure qi in such a brilliant way. Could it be that Lin Feng broke through to the Xianqi lair? Thought the crowd. That sword made from condensed pure qi wasn't something that a cultivator of the Lingqi lair was able to use. Even if Lin Feng hadn't broken through to the Xianqi lair, he was only a small step away. He was already at the very peak of the Lingqi lair. At that moment, Lin Feng and Du Bai were staring at each other. In the same way, Du Bai was also standing on a blade. They were both standing in the sky while releasing swift and fierce qi. A tiny little cultivator of the Lingqi lair, that's all. And yet you dare to talk big all the time. Today, I will carry out the second blade attack, and you will understand that you are just an arrogant fool," said Du Bai, sounding cold and detached. He raised his arm into the sky and the pure qi in the air started whistling and moving straight into the palm of his hand. He condensed the qi into a gigantic blade. It looked strong and sharp as if it could cut through anything in its path. Lin Feng was standing in the sky motionless. He wasn't even taking out a sword. Du Bai had an obvious mocking smile on the corner of his mouth. He wanted everybody to know that even if he had lost against Chong Bai Luo, not anybody could humiliate him. Nobody could despise him even if he had lost. It had been his first defeat and would remain the last one. Lacerate. His arm started rushing down towards Lin Feng. The gigantic blade was lacerating the atmosphere. The air was slightly being split apart like a parting sea. Lin Feng looked calm and serene. He was just observing the gigantic blade moving towards him. When it arrived just above his head, Lin Feng finally moved as fast as the wind. It had just been a faint movement and Lin Feng had vanished from his initial position. There wasn't any sign of him on the ground either. Whistling sounds filled the air as the blade cut through the atmosphere. The gigantic blade had chopped down but hadn't come into contact with Lin Feng. But the blade force was still rushing down without stopping. He dodged so quickly. The crowd on the ground was gasping with astonishment, especially when they sensed the oppressing blade energy. They were so scared that they were shaking from head to toe. The crows was unceasingly dodging the energy. Boom! The blade made from pure qi continued to send its strength down, which crashed into the ground, making a cloud of dust rise into the air. On the ground, a huge and deep fissure appeared. People couldn't believe their eyes. However, Du Bai didn't look proud of himself at all. His face was just filled with endless coldness. Lin Feng had dodged his blade attack so easily. That blade had been completely useless. He had attacked Lin Feng but wasn't even able to touch him. Wasn't that attack pointless? Dubai shouted furiously and condensed his pure chi again. A strong wind emerged and rolled through the atmosphere emitting fluttering sounds. It was as quick as lightning. Lin Feng's silhouette slightly shook. A moment before, when that blade had moved towards him, he had sensed it because of his earth fusion. Even the tiniest grain of sand couldn't escape from Lin Feng's senses. At the same time, his agility techniques were extremely well developed. Unless the opponent's speed became monstrous and didn't give Lin Feng enough time to dodge, the opponent wouldn't be able to touch him. Besides, Dubai was using pure chi to make his blade even more brutal, which greatly influenced his speed. Therefore, he wasn't able to touch Lin Feng. Your words sound great yet lack substance. Is that the blade you are so intensely proud of? Do you think that, in a life and death battle, an opponent would stand still so you can unleash your blade attacks? If you can't touch me, how is this even considered a battle? Said Lin Feng, making fun of Dubai, which made him grow even more furious. The crowd was shivering. Indeed, during a battle, cultivators could use any number of skills and fought in different ways. Dubai had a blade spirit, which was extremely powerful, and other people couldn't resist its power. There could only be one winner and one loser. Even though his blade was extremely brutal, if it always missed his opponent, it was useless. It was just a crappy blade. Of course, it was also due to the fact that Lin Feng was particularly quick with his acute senses. In fact, Dubai's blade wasn't actually that slow, otherwise, becoming a blade cultivator would have been pointless. Are you just going to dodge my attacks? Joked Dubai. I only dodge? Why don't you just simply admit that you are a crappy blade cultivator? Do you never dodge when you fight? Alright, we will see if you will take my attacks head on, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. Immediately after, he raised his hand. The pure chi in the atmosphere started to spin. Battle energy as well as some deadly chi rose into in the sky. A sword made of multiple types of pure chi condensed in Lin Feng's hand. He looked like a deadly god of war. The sunlight started moving towards his body. A dazzling and resplendent golden light started to revolve around his sword, as it started to absorb sunlight. A scorching heat invaded the atmosphere and completely dominated the area. What a terrifying skill! People raised their heads and looked at the sword in Lin Feng's hand. It was as dazzling as the sun, and it was so bright that it blinded them. The battle energy was dazzling and burning bright, but the scorching light was even more painful to the eyes. Lin Feng took a step forwards and his sword energy filled the atmosphere. It was monstrously violent as it pierced through the air. Dubai, the other day, I withstood your first blade attack. After that you became arrogant and said that I could only withstand only one of your attacks. I don't understand what gives you the right to say such arrogant words. You're a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer, and you are still unable to reach me with your blade even though I am only at the Ling Qi layer. Surprisingly, you are not ashamed of spitting out such insanities. I really admire you for your shamelessness. Lin Feng stepped forwards again and his swift and fierce sword energy bombarded the atmosphere. His energy was becoming more brutal with each passing second. At that moment, Dubai sensed an extremely sharp and oppressive energy, as if his body was going to be ripped apart. He slightly frowned and suddenly had the sensation that Lin Feng's sword wasn't a single bit weaker than his own blade. You are weak and yet consider yourself as a genius cultivator. You are unable to make any progress with your attitude. You lost against Chong Bai Luo, which is normal, but the most shameless thing you did was to refuse my advice and take it as a humiliation when actually it could have greatly benefited you to heed my advice. Actually, it was because of the previous humiliation of losing against Chong Bai Luo, because you cannot defeat the person who humiliated you, you directed your hatred towards me. You have already lost your determination on the path of cultivation. You are considered as a genius, but it is just an undeserved title, said Lin Feng. These words bombarded Dubai's heart. Indeed, he had lost against Chong Bai Luo, and had been strongly affected by that defeat. Therefore, when he had heard Lin Feng, he had become furious, wanted to kill him and threatened him. Dubai's energy was getting weaker and weaker. When the crowd saw that, they were astonished. Lin Feng's energy was becoming more and more powerful while Dubai was losing his determination because of Lin Feng's words. Dubai, if you want to use me to prove something, I will show you that the so-called best disciple of the Celestial Academy is an undeserved reputation. You are just a trashy cultivator who put too much effort into breaking through to higher layers, nothing more. Lin Feng jumped in the sky and released an incredible amount of deadly sword energy. His sword was dazzling as it pierced through the sky and moved nearer to Dubai. Dubai raised his head and saw Lin Feng's sword, which was blinding to look at. It seemed like looking at Lin Feng's sword was like looking into the sun. It really looked like a small sun, so dazzling that he couldn't keep his eyes open and therefore couldn't look at Lin Feng. Ah! Shouted Dubai. His arm transformed into a blade and slashed through the air. Once again his attack had missed its target. Pierce. At the moment when Dubai had launched his blade attack, at the same time Lin Feng also attacked. His sword pierced the sky. It was incredibly sharp and contained a scorching hot sunlight. The crowd was astonished. The smell of burning filled the atmosphere. That sword had pierced the atmosphere and it seemed like solar flames were burning the atmosphere itself. That dazzling sword had set the air on fire and a long trail of flames appeared in the sky. It looked incredible. Besides, at the same time, Dubai's blade was slowly vanishing inside that dazzling light. People in the crowd had their mouths wide open and were left breathless. They were only staring at that dazzling sword. People in the crowd had their mouths wide open and were left breathless. They were only staring at that dazzling sword. Such a sword attack had surprisingly been carried out by a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer, Lin Feng. Suddenly, they understood that Dubai was not a match for Lin Feng. Under that sword, a horrible shriek of agony filled the air. It was shocking. That horrible shriek had obviously been emitted by Dubai. The crowd only saw that incredibly proud young man, Dubai, slowly fall from the sky. Besides, his body was surrounded by flames. That sword attack had set him on fire. Dubai no longer had any arms left attached to his body. He would never be able to use his blade again. Eh? Shouted Dubai furiously while glaring at Lin Feng with hatred in his eyes. You say that I cannot withstand your second blade attack, but I just cut off your arm with my first attack. You only have yourself to blame, said Lin Feng coldly. While looking at Dubai, he said, I will not kill you. You came here to prove to everyone how extremely strong and powerful you are. But your arm is the price you pay for being insufferably arrogant and threatening me. Dubai had been defeated by Bai Luo and had wanted to use Lin Feng to regain his reputation. Nobody would have ever thought that he would end up losing his arm because of it. Dubai wasn't the best disciple in the Celestial Academy anymore. And on top of that, he wasn't even the second best either. Lin Feng had easily defeated him and could easily take his life. Bai Luo and Lin Feng were incredible geniuses. The only question was between Lin Feng and Bai Luo. Who was the strongest? Initially, everybody already considered Bai Luo as the strongest in the Celestial Academy. That was because nobody, not even Dubai, could rival him. However, that day's battle had just shown them that being at the top in the ranking didn't necessarily mean they were the strongest, and also that rushing into a higher cultivation level, before you were ready, didn't necessarily increase a cultivator's battle power either. The one who used to be the top-ranked disciple of the academy, Dubai, had already lost 2 battles. On top of that, Lin Feng had cut off his remaining arm, making him completely armless. Yet Lin Feng had been merciful and spared his life. As expected, it's the era of the geniuses, said people in the crowd while sighing. Each and every hidden genius was now starting to reveal their power. Lin Feng and Bai Luo were both good examples of people who had more power than originally believed. However, the so-called geniuses who didn't advance and give it their all were doomed. For example, Dubai had lost his reputation and lost his last remaining arm. Being a genius was a perpetual fight. If geniuses could rise, others could fall. For example, in Shuiyu, who knew if the 8 high officials would be the same in the following year? Who would become the genius of the geniuses? Who had what it took to shock the masses? Get lost, said Lin Feng to Dubai, which made Dubai's facial expression go rigid. The expression on the corner of his mouth seemed to indicate that he found himself to be ridiculous. He had thought that he was amazingly strong, that Lin Feng was the same as an insect before him. But at that moment, Lin Feng was dominating the entire situation and talking to him as if he didn't even matter anymore. Besides, if Dubai didn't leave, it would mean that even though he had lost his last arm, he still wanted to fight. He turned around, stepped on an extremely weak blade made from pure qi and left. His silhouette vanished into the sky, which made many people look disappointed. On the vast public square, various comments were spreading through the crowd. After that battle, the news would spread very quickly, and everybody would quickly know that Lin Feng had cut off Du Bai's arm. People were even trying to figure out what the new ranking list could look like. Everybody agreed on the fact that Bai Luo was the top ranked in the academy. Lin Feng was a bit weaker than Bai Luo, so the crowd thought that he would be ranked second. When Ao Shui's ranking as before wouldn't change, he was still the third best in the academy. The crowd had been completely dumbstruck by Lin Feng's performance, but they still considered Bai Luo as stronger than Lin Feng because he had broken through to the Xianqi layer. His cultivation level was higher than that of Lin Feng. Besides, his blue void spirit was monstrously powerful. Nobody was able to escape his blue void underworld. If he wanted to kill Du Bai, he could have done it very easily. Because of all of this, people estimated that it would be extremely difficult for Lin Feng to defeat Bai Luo, who was monstrously strong. But the crowd also admittedly thought that even though Bai Luo was the best in the academy at the moment, that would probably change in the future. After all, Lin Feng was younger than him by a few years. Lin Feng had huge potential. When Bai Luo was at the same age as Lin Feng, he wasn't nearly as strong as Lin Feng. Bai Luo was monstrously powerful and best in the academy. Lin Feng had extremely high natural abilities and had the greatest future potential. However, potential couldn't be used to determine a cultivator's strength. For example, after Bai Luo had broken through to the Xianqi layer, he had immediately challenged Du Bai and easily defeated him. He had thus become the best in the academy. It seemed like Bai Luo had become an entirely different person after breaking through. Even though Lin Feng had high potential, would he follow the same path as Bai Luo in the future? Nobody could predict the future. If Bai Luo could fight against Lin Feng, that would be the best, thought the people of the academy. They were thinking that in the past, when Lin Feng had come out right after Bai Luo had left, it was a pity. If the two of them had fought, wouldn't it have been an inspiring battle? Bai Luo knew nothing of the comments, which were spreading in the crowd. After defeating Du Bai and becoming the top-ranked disciple in the academy, he had confined himself for a few days to strengthen and consolidate the power gained from breaking into the Xianqi layer. At that moment he had just come out and was walking through the public square. He heard people's comments and whispers and learned that Lin Feng had also defeated Du Bai, and that he, on top of that, had cut off Du Bai's last arm, making him unable to wield a blade. At that moment, everybody was comparing Bai Luo with Lin Feng. Bai Luo was walking unnoticed through the crowd, which showed the power difference between him and them. He then took off his bamboo hat, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Lin Feng is amusing. He is just a weak cultivator of the Ling Qi layer. Could he really overturn the heavens? Said Bai Luo mockingly. He then smiled coldly and said, Du Bai is really worthless. He cannot even compete with a cultivator at the Ling Qi layer. If I had known that, I would have crippled his cultivation to help avoid him making a fool of himself again. When people around him heard his words, they turned around and looked at him. They couldn't help but be astonished. Bai Luo. Surprisingly, it was Bai Luo. Some people were gasping with astonishment. Immediately, more and more people started turning around and looking at him. Bai Luo was really there. Bai Luo glanced at the crowd with an extremely arrogant look. He enjoyed the sensation of being observed and worshipped by tens of thousands of people. He just had to show himself and he could draw everybody's attention. Lin Feng would never be able to steal his grandeur. He wasn't as charismatic. It seems like on that day when Lin Feng and I didn't fight, you all have misunderstood something. Since you want to compare Lin Feng and me, I will show you who, between Lin Feng and me, the real genius of the academy is. I want everybody to clearly understand that Lin Feng, the one that you describe as a genius, is, in front of me, as worthless as Du Bai. Bai Luo sounded extremely arrogant. Immediately after, his silhouette flickered and shot through the sky, which made people shiver. Their eyes were twinkling. From what Bai Luo had said, it seemed like he wanted to fight against Lin Feng. He wanted to crush Lin Feng and be considered the sole genius of the academy. He wanted to be the only person at the top. Lin Feng also didn't know what was going on within the academy. Something incredible had occurred in the imperial city recently. In the eastern part of the city, there was a hill called the Dongling Hill. It seemed like the sun was shining on that area much more than usual, especially towards the top of the hill. It was particularly pleasant to go there to observe the sunset because the temperature was surprisingly much nicer than in other places. At that moment, at the top of the Dongling Hill, the atmosphere wasn't filled with warmth. Instead, flames were invading the atmosphere. These flames were aggressive and blazing. These flames were incredibly monstrous and unyielding. Around the Dongling Hill, many people were astonished. Surprisingly, there was a fire. They were wondering what kind of strong fire cultivator would have set such a fire. Or maybe it had been caused during a battle between two extremely strong cultivators. It was possible that they created some flames made from pure qi, which ignited Dongling Hill. Besides, no matter what caused the fire, the cultivation strength must have been monstrous because at this moment the ground and the atmosphere itself were catching on fire. However, nobody noticed that when the flames rose, there was a person covered with sweat who seemed exhausted. That person was walking away, and with Dongling Hill to their back, they didn't even look back at the fire behind them. Lin Feng was slowly approaching the palace where the military students of the Celestial Academy lived. Lin Feng was slowly approaching the palace where the military students of the Celestial Academy lived. At that moment, his hair was extremely messy and he had dark stains all over his clothes. He also didn't smell too good because he was sitting in the intense heat for a long period of time, which was why people were not fond of approaching him in his current state. But Lin Feng's eyes were just as resplendent as before and still showed that profound, unfathomable expression. "Lin Feng," said a voice which was filled with excitement. Lin Feng raised his head and saw a smiling man coming towards him. "Is there a problem?" asked Lin Feng. He didn't remember having ever met that man before. He didn't know him. "No, I just thought that we could talk about cultivation together. How do you practice cultivation? You are so young yet you are so terrifyingly strong already," asked the man while smiling. Lin Feng slightly frowned but he immediately smiled. "I just closed my eyes," said Lin Feng while smiling. Huh. That man's eyes twinkled. He didn't understand what Lin Feng meant. "I close my eyes, this is my strategy when I practice cultivation," said Lin Feng with the same warm and friendly smile as before. The man looked like he was lost in thought for a moment but immediately after, he nodded, smiled and said, "All right." When he finished talking, he slowly closed his eyes. But at the moment when he closed his eyes, a strong whistling sound pierced through his ears. That man, whose eyes were closed, suddenly violently rushed backwards. A monstrous pure qi was flowing around his body. Such a technique was dazzling to behold. People who were around started shaking. It was another cultivator of the Xianqi layer. Since when were there so many cultivators of the Xianqi layer? They could be seen everywhere. "Die," said Lin Feng in a low voice. Deadly energy spread through the atmosphere. A sword immediately pierced the pure qi and penetrated into the opponent's chest. The man opened his eyes. He was blankly staring at Lin Feng. He couldn't believe his eyes. How did you know?" asked the man with a husky voice. Dark red blood was unceasingly flowing from his wound. "You asked me to give you some advice, but from the beginning to the end, you were not paying attention and just kept on the same fake smile on your face. Don't you think that it looked incredibly strange?" said Lin Feng coldly and detached, still holding the dagger. If that person had really been one of Lin Feng's followers, he would have shown some excitement or confusion. He would have at least shown some type of emotion. Instead, that person had a fake smile and his emotions did not change at all. "You kill me by relying on something as unimportant as my facial expression," said that man, who, as before, couldn't believe it. "Of course not, your smile looked extremely fake indeed, but also when we were talking some deadly qi targeted me from behind. It was very well hidden before that, but they slightly lost focus and released some deadly qi that at least gave me a reason to kill you," said Lin Feng, sounding ice cold. When he finished talking, in a flash, a brutal and oppressive energy appeared around his body. Lin Feng's sword slightly moved and scorching hot fire qi attacked the opponent's vital organs and blood vessels. At the same time, he abruptly turned around. A spear which looked like a long dragon was rushing towards him. It was another cultivator of the Xianqi layer. Lin Feng was wondering how it was possible that cultivators of the Xianqi layer to keep appearing in groups to trap him, when he had only just broken through to the Lingqi layer. He also considered cultivators of the Xianqi layer as gods. He even almost never had the occasion to meet cultivators of the Xianqi layer. After breaking through to the Xianqi layer, he would possibly meet more of them. You're an assassin and you can't even control your deadly qi. As an assassin, you are doomed to remain a failure forever. Lin Feng abruptly moved back as he critiqued his assassin. It was precisely because of him releasing a small amount of deadly energy that Lin Feng had understood what was going on. Otherwise, he wouldn't have immediately attacked. If he hadn't attacked first, the opponent would have been able to attempt their trap. With one cultivator of the Xianqi layer attacking from the front while the other was attacking him from the back, the situation could have been fatal for Lin Feng. But these two cultivators had only broken through to the first Xianqi layer, so basically, Lin Feng didn't really care too much. When that assassin saw that one attack hadn't been enough and that he was unable to touch Lin Feng, the spear made of pure qi vanished. He turned around and started to retreat. Those who were trained to be assassins weren't good at fighting face to face. If their surprise attacks failed, they would retreat and try again. That was one of the assassin's rules. If the assassin stayed there and didn't manage to kill Lin Feng, it would draw the attention of the strong students. "You want to go?" said Lin Feng while smiling. Lin Feng took a step and rushed forward. In his hand appeared a sword made from pure qi which pierced through the atmosphere. "Stop!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. His sword was releasing a resplendent pure qi which was moving towards the opponent. That person could sense the powerful sword qi moving towards him. His facial expression went rigid. He then turned around and released an extremely strong pure qi to stop Lin Feng's sword. However, the pure qi collapsed immediately and the pure qi dispersed into the atmosphere. But that person used the force of Lin Feng's attack to propel his body further away from Lin Feng. "Die!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. Lin Feng's sword rushed towards the assassin and its light was dazzling as the sun. If others could see Lin Feng's sword, they would have the impression that they were looking directly into the sun. That assassin's facial expression drastically changed. He tried to condense more pure qi to block the attack, but Lin Feng's dazzling sword instantly reached the assassin, annihilating everything in its path. Once Lin Feng was infuriated, nothing could stop him. His blood slashed into the atmosphere as the dazzling sword struck the assassin. He had been killed by the sword, but the moment his sword pierced his opponent, the opponent's body caught fire. The flames violently rose into the sky. In a short moment, that assassin was nothing but ashes in the wind. Not only did Lin Feng's attack have the same dazzling light as the sun, but it also contained the sun's scorching heat. It could burn anything. What a terrifying sword attack, thought the people who had gathered around. Lin Feng was monstrously strong. Cultivators of the Xianqi layer couldn't even withstand a single one of Lin Feng's attacks. Even in their dreams, the crowd would have never imagined such a scene. As far as they were concerned, cultivators of the Xianqi layer were like gods, and it was their dream to become one someday. But Lin Feng was shaking their beliefs. One sword attack had been enough to defeat the cultivators of the Xianqi layer. In a very short amount of time, two assassins of the Xianqi layer tried to kill Lin Feng and both ended up dead. They didn't even have an opportunity to fight back. They had just been killed on the spot. For trying to assassinate Lin Feng, they were killed. When Lin Feng saw the burning corpse, he still looked cold and detached. He was even still releasing a small amount of deadly qi. Last time, he had been ambushed by two cultivators of the Xianqi layer but had been injured severely. He had even taken a few days to recover. It wasn't long after that two cultivators of the Xianqi layer had appeared again using the same tactic. Apart from a few people with an incredible social status, Lin Feng had no clue as to who could send so many cultivators of the Xianqi layer to kill him. "Yu Tianxing," whispered Lin Feng with a murderous expression on his face. One of the people who had started everything and helped with the original assassination attempt was Yu Tianxing. That was enough. Lin Feng turned and started walking. He entered the residence palace and went back to his living quarters. When Yixue saw Lin Feng, she was surprised. At that moment, Lin Feng looked like he had been having a tough time and he even smelt like smoke. "Master, I will help and prepare some hot water," said Yixue while walking towards the bathroom. She was smart and knew what she had to do. "I don't need hot water. Cold water is enough for me," explained Lin Feng to Yixue. It seemed that he really did need a bath. "All right," said Yixue. She didn't turn around and kept walking towards the bathroom. "What's going on?" asked Mengqing while opening the door and coming in. She couldn't help but ask when she saw Lin Feng's appearance. "Nothing, it happened while I was practicing," replied Lin Feng while waving both hands to reassure Mengqing. He then started walking towards her room. "Oh, that's all," said Mengqing. Immediately after, she closed the door in Lin Feng's face, which stupefied Lin Feng and stopped him in his tracks. A wry smile appeared on his face. He was a bit annoyed. It was clear that Mengqing was angry with him for some reason. Why was she acting so cold again? Will that ice goddess ever let her heart melt? "Humph!" Someone groaned by Lin Feng's side. It was Lan Jiao. She was sitting on a chair made of stone. She looked proud of herself as if she was gloating at Lin Feng's misfortune. Lin Feng looked at Lan Jiao and she immediately avoided his eyes and looked somewhere else. She didn't want Lin Feng to meet her eyes. But immediately after, Lin Feng shook his head and said nothing. He immediately walked towards the bathroom. That move surprised Lan Jiao, who gnashed her teeth and furiously stamped her feet. She used to be extremely proud and arrogant, but since she was following Lin Feng, she kept being bullied and ignored by that shameless bastard. Lin Feng entered the bathroom and Yixue had already prepared the water. When she saw Lin Feng arrive, she said in a low voice, "Master, do you need me to help undress you and wash you while you bathe?" Lin Feng entered the bathroom and Yixue had already prepared the water. When she saw Lin Feng arrive, she said in a low voice, "Master, do you need me to help undress you and wash you while you bathe?" While talking, Yixue slightly lowered her head and an expression of shyness appeared on her face. Lin Feng was a bit surprised and scratched his head. A beautiful woman wanted to take off his clothes and wash him? He hadn't ever had such an offer before. But Lin Feng shook his head and said, "No need, thank you, you can go back to what you were doing." "All right," said Yixue while nodding. She then left while still looking at the floor and closed the door behind her. Lin Feng smiled and immediately entered the huge bathtub. In a flash, a cool and refreshing sensation spread through Lin Feng's body, and he couldn't help but moan. When using his Cosmos Burning Sun skill, Lin Feng absorbed sunlight which penetrated into his body, and then turned into pure fire qi. Lin Feng clearly sensed the scorching heat of these flames and even started to feel his blood vessels burning. Last time, he had set the entire Dongling Hill on fire, which proved how scorching hot his flames were. Therefore, when Lin Feng entered the cold water, he felt like he had just left hell and arrived in heaven. His body had finally cooled down, his pores opened and he felt extremely comfortable. Lin Feng closed his eyes and as if he was intoxicated with that refreshing and comfortable feeling, he fell asleep. Lin Feng had surprisingly forgotten that he was in the bath and fell sound asleep. These days Lin Feng was exhausted and needed to relax. After some time, Lan Jiao and Yixue were outside and suddenly felt a scorching heat against their face. They couldn't help but be stupefied. They both looked at each other and immediately looked towards the bathroom. "Yixue, is he still in the bath?" asked Lan Jiao perplexed. "Yes, besides he was having a cold bath," nodded Yixue. She didn't understand what was going on either. "Go and have a look," said Lan Jiao to Yixue, who immediately blushed and replied, "I think you should go and see." "No way," said Lan Jiao while shaking her head. Immediately after, she stopped looking in that direction, but the heat was growing more and more intense and violent. Both of them were extremely curious. What is Lin Feng actually doing? "Yixue, we could go together," said Lan Jiao, but Yixue as before shook her head. "I'm not going." "If you don't want to go, I'll go," said Lan Jiao, who couldn't control her curiosity any longer. She was taking triumphant strides as if she was heroically sacrificing herself. Yixue looked at her back with sparkling eyes. She was also very curious. Who was the real victim here? What an abominable woman. Lin Feng gnashed his teeth. Lan Jiao had already seen him, but that hadn't been enough. She sent Yi Xuan after her. Lin Feng would definitely have his revenge. The Cosmos Burning Sun skill was way too violent and brutal. It could even make the water in a bathtub evaporate into nothing. Concerning the sun pattern which had appeared on his body, Lin Feng had no idea what it was. He was just thinking that his body had become like this because he was practicing the Cosmos Burning Sun skill, and it enabled him to radiate his own heat. As expected, after having a bath, Lin Feng was feeling much better. However, he wasn't hurrying to leave. Instead, he poured some more cold water and washed himself a second time. That was the only way for him to feel absolutely comfortable before he put on his clean clothes. Immediately after his bath, he walked towards the courtyard. At that moment, Lan Jiao and Yi Xue were once again in the courtyard. Yi Xue had her head lowered and was unceasingly twirling her fingers out of anxiety. She didn't dare raise her head and look at Lin Feng. Her head was lowered but her cheeks and ears were extremely red. Concerning Lan Jiao, she was calmly standing on the bench made of stone. Her eyes were closed. She even ignored Lin Feng, which made him gnash his teeth. Lin Feng was a virgin in his previous life as well as in that new life. Having been seen naked by Lan Jiao was an abomination. Besides, she had even tricked Yi Xuan into looking. Lan Jiao was really detestable. "Don't you have something to say to me?" asked Lin Feng coldly. Lan Jiao opened her eyes and looked at Lin Feng. "What do you want me to say? You could at least apologize," said Lin Feng while looking at Lan Jiao, who looked extremely arrogant and carefree. She wasn't shocked at all. "Why would I apologize?" said Lan Jiao while frowning. "I just glanced. Did you lose something? Besides, haven't you already seen me naked?" Lin Feng was speechless. He then said coldly and detached, "And when did I see you? You don't want to admit it? On that evening, try and dare say that the illusion didn't affect you. You also wanted to take my clothes off," said Lan Jiao fearlessly while staring at Lin Feng. She then added, "Or maybe what you mean is that you want to see me naked for real in person. If that's what you mean, just tell me and I will compensate you. Don't hesitate and quickly tell me if that's the case. I will not get offended," said Lan Jiao in a seducing tone. Her body was moving nearer and nearer to Lin Feng. Lin Feng could already sense her voluptuous chest pressing against his body, which suddenly made his heat become even more intense. He was going to burn. "Say something. If you want to see me naked, I will show you. Do you want to see?" said Lan Jiao, sounding more and more sensual. She looked extremely alluring. Lin Feng's mouth was extremely dry. She was truly bewitching. Lin Feng gnashed his teeth and glanced at Meng Qing's room. Immediately after, he looked at Lan Jiao with a cruel glance. He then turned around and walked towards Meng Qing's room. "You win," said Lin Feng. He had no way to win against her. What if he really wanted her to take off her clothes? "You know it, that's the most important thing," said Lan Jiao while looking at Lin Feng, who was walking towards Meng Qing's room. She sounded like she was proud of her victory. While looking at Lin Feng leaving, she sat down again. She no longer looked proud. Instead, her eyes revealed a lonely girl who felt ridiculous at herself. A wry smile appeared on her face. In Lin Feng's heart there was only Meng Qing. Yi Xuan raised her head, and when she saw Lan Jiao's facial expression, she shivered. Immediately after, she lowered her head again. In Lao Jiao's eyes there was no pride at all, there was only sadness. Lin Feng immediately entered into Meng Qing's room, as if he had entered his own room. Lin Feng immediately entered into Meng Qing's room, as if he had entered his own room. If he had knocked at her door, Meng Qing would have pretended that she was sleeping and would have ignored him. Lin Feng had learnt from his mistakes and didn't knock anymore. Meng Qing was sitting up and looked at Lin Feng as he entered. There was a strange expression in her beautiful eyes, and she said to Lin Feng, "Did you become stronger?" "Yes," nodded Lin Feng while smiling. "I have broken through to the Xianqi layer. Soon, I will not need you to protect me anymore." When Meng Qing heard Lin Feng, she was stupefied. She suddenly felt a wave of sadness as she looked at Lin Feng and said, "What you mean is that you will no longer need me by your side anymore? How could that even be possible?" Lin Feng at that moment saw the hopelessness disappear from Meng Qing's face, and instead she looked delighted. That girl was finally accepting her emotions a bit more with each day. Lin Feng walked towards Meng Qing and sat down next to her. He put one of his hands on her back and then shifted it to wrap around her waist, which made Meng Qing shiver. She wanted to move away, but she couldn't because Lin Feng was using force to keep her close to him. He then pulled her into his embrace. Lin Feng had understood that he couldn't wait for Meng Qing to take the initiative. He was the only one who could move things forwards a little bit at a time. In any case, Meng Qing would never get angry at him. Lin Feng wouldn't need a lot more time before he was stronger than Meng Qing. At that moment, Meng Qing wouldn't be able to watch over him anymore. She would have no choice but to accept it. When Lin Feng thought about that, he felt slightly happier. "Meng Qing, I will not need you to protect me anymore. However, I will be the one to protect you." When Meng Qing heard Lin Feng's warm tone, her heartbeat slightly accelerated. A beautiful and sweet smile suddenly appeared on her face, but it lasted for only a brief second. She remained speechless. After a while, Meng Qing spoke. "Lin Feng, your body has changed. What skill have you learnt? Is it a fire-based skill?" "You could say that, yes. It's called Cosmos Burning Sun. It's a skill which uses the power of the sun. It enables a cultivator to use the pure qi of the sun, which is obviously extremely hot," explained Lin Feng without hiding anything from Meng Qing. "Cosmos Burning Sun." Meng Qing was a bit surprised and added, "Lin Feng, when you start practicing Cosmos Burning Sun, it is a D-level skill of lower quality. However, when the pure qi of the sun becomes stronger, the skill level increases as well. It then becomes an authentic sun skill. It's monstrously powerful. How did you obtain it?" Lin Feng was surprised. He looked at Meng Qing curiously, asked, "Meng Qing, how do you know these things?" "Because what I practice is a lower moon-based skill," replied Meng Qing. "Now your Cosmos Burning Sun skill is a D-level skill of lower quality. It can also be considered as a lower sun skill, but after, when your mastery of the skill will improve, it will become an authentic sun skill. In comparison with a lower moon skill, the Cosmos Burning skill can really ignite the sky and boil the oceans." Sun, moon. There were also other lower sun and lower moon skills. Lin Feng's eyes were twinkling. That sun on his chest wasn't the real sun, instead it was just a part of its power. Meng Qing was only practicing a lower moon skill, and yet her ice energy was already monstrously powerful. Besides, that Cosmos Burning Sun was a sun skill. No wonder that it was so scorching hot that it was able to make the water of the bathtub evaporate. "Meng Qing, since the Cosmos Burning Sun skill is little sun skill and that what you practice is a little moon skill, well..." Lin Feng's eyes were twinkling and he was scratching his head. His lips vibrated. He smiled and said, "Meng Qing, do you want to practice cultivation with me? We could practice together." Lin Feng looked shy. Those days he had already broken through to the Xianqi layer, but the two words practice together were making his heart jump up and down. Especially that he had just asked the woman of his dreams, a goddess, to practice with him. Meng Qing. Asking her took all of his courage. When Meng Qing heard these two words, she looked stupefied. Her heart also started pounding. She was also very nervous. "Meng Qing, don't misunderstand me. I just want you to help you get rid of that painful cold. With my sun skill, I should be able to control your lower moon skill," said Lin Feng when he saw that Meng Qing was staring at him. He didn't feel at ease, but he was still trying to smile. When Meng Qing saw Lin Feng's facial expression, the ice in her heart finally melted and she smiled. Her smile looked like a beautiful lotus flower which appeared on a glacier. Lin Feng was dazzled. That smile was a way for Meng Qing to express herself. A magnificent and resplendent smile had appeared on her face, and it could make an entire glacier melt. It was as if her beauty had penetrated into Lin Feng's soul. Lin Feng smiled as well, with his natural charm. Seeing Meng Qing smile, Lin Feng's smile was profound and meaningful. It came straight from the depths of his heart. "Lin Feng, give me more time, all right?" said Meng Qing in a soft voice which made Lin Feng's face go rigid. His heart was still pounding and he said, "Meng Qing, does that mean that you agree?" Meng Qing was requesting for some more time. which indubitably meant that she was tacitly agreeing. When Meng Qing saw how enthusiastic Lin Feng was, her eyes twinkled and her face turned red. She didn't dare look him in the eyes. But Meng Qing slightly nodded anyway. She had agreed. She was in love with him, how could she refuse?